if the point is to like live happily, right? It's like, all right, well, if I think this thing and you think that thing, like we can still get along and talk about it and be friends. We don't have to like hate each other because we think of something different. It's like, but today's day and age, like that's almost like not possible because it's become so everything's so volatile. Like you can't believe like I'm not allowed to believe something because you think it's wrong. It's like, well, that's stupid. It's like I think you're wrong for believing this, but I don't tell you you're wrong.
Hello, and welcome to Words on the Wind podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend and fellow firefighter, Christian Diehm. Christian is a former center for Idaho State University's football team and now dedicates his life to serving as a full-time firefighter. Christian is known for his enthusiasm for teaching and his readiness to share well-founded opinions. Christian brings a dynamic energy to any conversation, and he's never one to shy away from asking the challenging questions, making discussions with him both enlightening and engaging. Today, we'll dive into his origins and share some captivating stories from his journey so far. Thank you for listening, and as always, much love, Paul.
Some people know just how it is, and I know I gotta stand my ground. Some people say what's on their mind, and I swear I never treated you right. It's been slowing me down for a while.
You grew up in the Long Beach, San Pedro area growing up.
So, so I at least the parts that I don't remember were in military housing, and that was somewhere Long Beach-ish area. And then after that, like so after my parents had split up, mom lived in Torrance, California, on 214th Street, which is basically like gangland Torrance. And I didn't find this out till after we had moved, but yeah, we were on 213th, and 214th was like a fairly notorious street gang that's got some like ties into the rest of my family. So it's like that's where my mom lived. And then dad lived in San Pedro, which was like off one of the main roads. And then we kind of just bounced around that area. So it's like San Pedro, and then he lived in Carson. Mom lived in Wilmington, which is like basically all the cities around the LA harbor. And then Long Beach was just across the Vincent Thomas Bridge. So basically it's just like our version of the Golden Gate Bridge. And then, so that's kind of just the area I grew up in. And then it's been, I don't know, just kind of scattered after that.
Yeah. So growing up around all that, what type of, it was like Italian mobster gangs, or was it more your classic LA style Bloods Crips?
It depended on the area. At least in Pedro, right, there was like the two, I guess, fairly more known street gangs, and they were both on the same street, which didn't make any sense. It's just one was like higher up than the other one was, because Pedro's kind of built on a peninsula, so it's like all on a hill. The lower down the hill you went, the lower income, and the higher up the hill you went, like eventually you get up to like PV, Palos Verdes area, and it's like all doctors and rich kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get all the way down to basically like the harbor where the LA harbor's at. It's like project housing. But like, it was like 3rd Street. 3rd Street was where all the gangs were. Rancho 3rd Street was the Mexican gang. And then like, it was like 3rd Street Crips and then that was like farther up the hill, which didn't make any sense. They lived on the same damn street, but one group was Mexicans and they lived in the projects, and the other ones were just like all the black dudes and they just lived farther up the street. And then the rest of the town is just pretty normal. But there was a ton of like Croatians and Italians. But I guess like that's what happens when you're like a major port town.
Mm-hmm.
People just kind of naturally gravitated there. Like they got off the boat and then stayed there. And then like 4 or 5 generations later, I'm friends with all the kids, or at least classmates. And then, yeah, so you had like the typical kind of dumb street gang type of stuff. But because of the harbor, you would see like Hell's Angels drive around, the Vagos drive around, Mongols. Like every once in a while, you would see one of those guys with their colors on, like driving up and down Gaffey or Western Avenue. And you're just like, what are they doing here? And then you realize, yeah, there's a massive harbor, the biggest harbor on the West Coast. And a notorious street gang just happens to be cruising in town. Like, I don't know. It's too coincidental for someone to see almost every single like 1%er bike gang rolling through your high school town. But yeah, otherwise it's just pretty typical dumb gang stuff.
But as a kid, you didn't really realize what was going on around you. They left you alone for the most
No,
part.
I had well, and especially because like that street I grew up on in Torrance, like one street over is where the street gang kind of like originated. And it was like I have like family ties to it. So my mom's sister, so my Aunt Eva, like her husband, his family had ties to that street gang. So it was like, yeah, I just had no idea as a kid where we were at and like how bad it was. And it's just like with divorced parents, like they're just like, mom was always really good about not talking smack about my dad, but the flip side was not the same. So he was just constantly trashing like where we were living. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, it's just, you're a single dad, she's a single mom. Like you guys are doing what you need to do. But we were also living with like my grandma and my 3 other aunts. So it's like at one point at the 213th, we were all in the same house. So there's what, 7 of us? Excuse me. 8. So there was 8 of us. At one point, there would be 8 of us in one house. So it'd be me, my mom, and my 2 sisters in one room on bunk beds. And then in the next room over, it was my 3 aunts sharing another room. And then my grandma had her own room. Because that's just how it was. Then when we moved, then it was, they bought a duplex. So my mom and the eldest sister, they bought a duplex. And so my mom and us were in the front house, and then my grandma and my 3 aunts were in the house behind us. And then we were just always super close. And the only relatives that like, so my Tio Chuy or my Aunt Eva, like they were married and had moved out of the house. Like they were the only ones that were out. Besides my mom obviously was like living 10 yards in front of them, but it wasn't because she couldn't go anywhere else, but that's just kind of like how Hispanic culture is. Like everybody's real close and tight. My stepmom's family is the same way. Like her entire family lived in one city, to the point where like high school teachers hearing the last name knew exactly who they were related to, because there was like, I don't know, if I'm counting all the cousins I have by marriage, either through my stepmom or my godparents, so Eva and Koki, like 100 or so cousins, like all around the same age. And then like, it's just generational. So it's like my stepmom, all her cousins, and then their parents, and then the grandparents, or like the elders of the family. And then there's always that one elder at the very top. And it's just, yeah, it's like huge family events. And then all my cousins knew each other because they all went to the same schools. They either went to different middle schools and ended up at the same high school, which, yeah, one family, I was like, oh yeah, do you know Joey? And they're like, yeah. Like, how do you know him? Oh, he's my cousin. Then I bring up the other side of the family at another family function, and they're all just like, well, how do you know them? And I'm just the weird, like, half Mexican white boy in the middle between like massively Hispanic families. And yeah, I'm just the odd one out. But everybody else, it was just kind of like, yeah, you just grow up in that one big area and everyone is within like 2-3 miles of each other.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that you guys were never allowed in the kitchen while the tamales were being made.
It's not that we weren't allowed. It's just that like, especially like with Hispanic cultures, it was very much so like male dominated. And so when like we had big family functions, especially like it was like super obvious around Thanksgiving and Christmas, but like, um, yeah, like Thanksgiving, right? The football games are on. All the dudes are just sitting watching football. And then all the food's getting ready. Like, unless we were like having like a barbecue for any random reason. But yeah, for the most part, like all the food was handled by the women in the family. And then if they made tamales, it was like very much so assembly line process. The meat and like everything was ready to go. But that was always like the day before or 2 days before all the cousins would come over with just the girls, and they would have like 8 or 9 in a small little kitchen, and they would just be an assembly line making tamales, and then that'd be all day, like almost an all day process, just to have it ready for Christmas. So when everybody came back, all the food was ready.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never got involved, mostly because there's not enough room, but also because it was like just how things were done. And then, yeah, my mom would like come out and ask, like, it was always oldest to youngest, right? So it'd go my uncles first, and then me and my cousin Joey. And then after that, it was like, all right, it's fair game for everybody. Now it's open.
Yeah, very family oriented.
Mm-hmm.
We always, I think we spent one holiday in Florida one time, Christmas holiday, and it was so weird not being around snow. When did you grew up with no snow?
No snow.
So it was just interesting. And you came up to college probably the first time you saw snow, or
No, so
Yeah.
my dad is from Yakima, Washington. And so like I had been up in the snow, like growing up. Like I learned to snowboard when I was like 11-ish, going to like White Pass in Washington. So yeah, so it's like dad. And then there was a time where my dad lived up in Washington. So for like major vacations like Christmas break or summer break, like we would spend 2 weeks during Christmas break in Washington, or like a month or two of summer break in Yakima with my dad. So it was like, no, I was never unfamiliar with snow. And so when I came up to Idaho for school, yeah, Pocatello was like gave very much so like Yakima vibes.
Mm.
So the small town thing didn't bug me. Like I didn't have to like, I don't know. I consider myself fairly simple. Like I don't need a whole lot. So it's like, yeah, I got to Pocatello and I was just like, yeah, I can just putt around town. I don't need to be busy 24/7.
Yeah, I can see it being kind of a culture shock coming from your area, though, of the LA County area.
See,
Going up to a small podunk in Idaho,
and that's what a lot of people thought it was going to be like. Was like, my culture shock was going to be size difference, like going from Southern California, where yeah, the beach, the snow, like literally any outdoor recreational like activity you could possibly think of is less than an hour away,
Mm.
to Pocatello, where literally the same case except for the beach. Like snowboarding, right? You had Pomerelle or Targhee, like 2-ish hours away. You had a bunch of hiking, a bunch of like mountain biking. You can go do whatever outdoorsy stuff you wanted. You just couldn't go to the beach. But if you're not already going to the beach, it's not like a huge selling point. Yeah, the beach is awesome. I love going, but I wasn't there every weekend. Like it wasn't my life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it wasn't like I didn't lose out on a whole bunch.
Yeah, we talked to some locals in LA when we were around the area visiting my uncle.
Mm.
They were locals that never been to the beach. It's like
Yeah,
it's right there.
Yeah, and it's like,
interesting.
It's definitely like the beach. It's such a weird selling point because like I've tried to convince buddies of mine. I'm like, dude, just move up to Idaho. It's cheaper. It's like blah 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 blah. And they go, well, I couldn't go to the beach. I'm like, when was the last time? When was the
Yeah.
last time you went to the beach? Well, that doesn't matter. It's like, no, it does, because you're trying to sell like
Yeah.
books to it's like trying to sell books to a blind man. It's like, if you don't,
Mhm.
if you can't use it or you're not using it, there's no point in like holding that as like a bargaining.
Yeah. A lot of people here in Idaho don't take advantage of the mountains. It's more in the
Yeah.
beautiful lakes. But
So-
the same.
So same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, why don't you move there? It's like, well, I wouldn't have access to this. It's like, do you use it?
I don't miss it till it's gone.
Yeah. And it's like, I didn't surf enough to really like miss the ocean. I mean, I do miss it. It is awesome, but yeah, it's just it's not like high on the priority list. So yeah, I didn't like feel like I lost anything coming up to Idaho. The culture shock was more about the like religious aspect of the eastern side of the state, because it's very heavy Mormon population.
Mhm.
And my only exposure to Mormonism before then was one guy on my swim team who was like super goofy and over the top and would not have been like, yeah, would never have guessed it that he was like a religious person. I'm pretty sure he ended up going to BYU.
Just not as zealous. Not as-
No, he was super
Yeah.
goofy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the guys on our swim team were very call it colorful. So like you, if for swimmers, like you use these things called drag suits, basically like boxer briefs, but they're made of mesh, so they
Mhm.
catch a bunch of water and they act like parachutes. So we would wear those. You wear those during practice. Well, his and like the two swim captains my freshman year or sophomore year, like they had like elaborate like prints on their drag shorts. So like his was like one was like a beach theme. The other one, he wore like a leopard print Speedo during a swim meet one time. And when I mean like the traditionally like female clothing leopard print, and he had it in just a Speedo. But, you know, they were both pretty fast swimmers. So it was one of those like they could be loud and vibrant and obnoxious with what they were wearing because they didn't care, because no one could beat them in the water. So it was like, yeah, like that was just swim was just one of those things.
Are those shorts for like forced resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
At least the drag shorts.
It's like running with a parachute, kind of.
Yeah, that's
Just
pretty much like,
to
because you
build
don't
up
have
that
a whole lot.
fast twitch.
Yeah, you're not going to wear a sweater in the water for resistance training when you're
Yeah.
swimming, because it's just going to mess you up too much. So,
Oh.
yeah, you either like hinder your movement with like knee boards or like those foam, like those eight shaped foam rollers that you just stick between your legs, basically force you to not kick. So you have to like use your arms more to like pull yourself, and it's just like just a tool. It's like a swimsuit that's basically naturally parachute.
So you grew up playing football. You were in swim, obviously. What other sports did you play?
Played a lot. Obviously, Mexican family, soccer was the first sport to play, and t-ball. So soccer and t-ball up until about like middle school. But it's like all my cousins were always way better than me at soccer, so it was like I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like whatever, just played on the team.
You make a good goalie.
That's where they typically put me,
Yeah.
because I was taller than everybody. So it was
Yeah.
me and my cousin Jeanette. Like we were the two tallest kids, and then that was it. Like everybody else, that was just how it went. And then baseball, wasn't great at baseball. It was okay. Played that until 8th grade. Started playing. Yeah, swim team was in the summers. What other sports are there? Like, yeah, I kind of dabbled in a lot of different sports.
And ended up going to college for football.
Yeah, so football happened because like that was right around 8th grade, right? So I had kind of stopped playing sports, stopped playing soccer, was playing baseball, but like baseball's not that like physically demanding, especially in like middle school level. Like you're not trying to get in overly good shape. So I was like starting to get a little pudgy, a little chubby 7th grader, and just being super tall. So I was probably by 7th grade, I was like pushing that 6 foot tall mark. And then 8th grade, like we saw like the football like the football signups. My dad was like, "Oh, do you want to play football?" And it was kind of one of those things where it's like, I did, but I didn't. I think it was one of those, like, he was more excited about it than I was. And I was just kind of like, whatever. Like, yeah, sure, I'll play football. Like, I'd never played it before. Excuse me. Went and signed up. Had to lose a bunch of weight. I had to lose like 20 pounds to make weight because when in that middle school age group, it's like there's weight classes. And if you can't make a certain weight class, then you get pushed up to the next higher group, which for me, it would have been like, I would have been barely into that weight class, but all the other kids that were in that weight class were like very obviously in that weight class.
So it's better to go down than up.
Yeah, much better to go down because it would have just been a bunch of like heavy kids just pushing me around basically because I'd never played football. I'd never done any kind of like strength training unless it was like PE class. And then, so I started playing football, lost the 20 pounds, made weight. And then after that, it was like when I got to high school, it was just kind of one of those, like, I never thought about if I like really loved any sports. So I was just like, well, the next natural progression is for me to just try out for the high school team. I was like, okay. Made the high school team. Did pretty okay, but freshmen don't typically play unless, you're one of those like gifted athletes or like you were already playing for 10 years and knew what you were doing. Sophomore year, I pretty much started for both ways, offense and defense for the JV team. Our high school did this thing where they would call up freshmen and sophomores from the JV team for varsity during the playoffs to kind of get them used to the speed increase. Because like I think that's the biggest thing that people don't really understand is like the speed of the game jumps pretty like exponentially from like JV to varsity in high school, right? Like that's your first big jump because that's when like kids start hitting like final growth spurts. They start getting bigger. Then from high school to college, it's a huge jump because now it's like these are full grown men playing against kids that might possibly be 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, now you're seeing final maturity like in people. And there was one guy I knew, his name was Benny Wishdell. He was a senior when I was a sophomore. He was already a pretty big dude. He was like 6'3", tight end, like probably 200 pounds or something like that. He left for college. He had come back to visit and like worked out with the team one week, probably like a year or two later. And he probably put on like 50 pounds of muscle. Like he just looked, he was noticeably larger than when he left and he was already big when he left. So it's like, that's the huge thing. And like, he only went to, he went to University of Willamette. It's like a school in Oregon, but I think it's a D2 school. So it's not like an SEC powerhouse, but even that jump, the speed increase is like pretty noticeable. And so, I started both ways sophomore year and then junior year. I kind of had the starting spot on the varsity team at tight end. And then senior year, same thing happened. I just maintained that and then started both ways again. And then it was just kind of like, again, next natural step in the progression. It's like try and get on for a college team. It wasn't like I stopped to think about whether or not I really wanted to do it, but it was one of those things where it's like my parents didn't make enough money for me to be like, I can just go to whatever school and they'll pay for it. We didn't have a whole lot of money. So like a big part of it was like, if I can get a scholarship and make this easier, that's what I will do. I got lucky because the recruiting process is hell. It is not.
I bet it's changed a lot since, because it's been 12, 13 years probably for us.
Yeah.
So it's around there. It's probably changed a lot in that just with social media and stuff. It seems like a lot of scouting is done over that now compared to how it was done when you were trying to get into college.
Yeah.
So how did you get it?
So, what you said about the social media is probably something that, it's something that coaches are probably using, but there's probably rules against them contacting players through like direct, like their DMs or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's like the biggest rule is like, there's a set amount of time in the school year that coaches can just openly communicate with whoever they want to. Like players, it doesn't matter. Like typically they got to go from like like the coaches to get like correspondence through, and like only those times of years, and they can show up to games, but they can't talk to anybody. So it's like a whole thing. For me, we had to pay for like a recruiting service. So basically you put like a highlight tape up, which you had to make yourself. So like I got all my game film from one of my coaches from the year prior, watched all of it, took down like, so I had to label all the tapes, right? So like game, like 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say 11 games, right? Because it's 10 games in the season. You have like one warm up game or however many it was. So I'd label all the CDs, watch each of the CDs, write down the timestamp of the play and in order on a piece of paper. And then I have to mail that back into them with the CD so that they could burn it and edit it out themselves. Then they would put it all together, make the highlight film. And then what they would do is like they would highlight me on the screen. So that way you're not looking for the person, right? So it'd either be like a red arrow pointing to me, or it would circle me on the screen. So that way they could, like, as they're watching, they're not like, where's he at? Rewinding. Because that's what it used to be. You have to rewind it, look for them, find them, watch the play, and then let it continue. They upload that to their website. And then basically you pick and choose what schools you want it to kind of like geographically, if you want to stay in a certain region, and then they'll send it out to all those coaches through the website. And then those coaches can go through and filter and like search players and see what they want to go to. So there was that, plus my dad at that point had already like medically retired through the military. So he was just at home. So he was calling coaches left and right. He was saying, hey, like, we got game film we can send you, blah, 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 blah. So it was that website and a lot of work that my dad put in, because I wasn't doing it. I was just kind of like, oh, well, the coaches will come find me if they want me, blah, 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 blah. And my high school was pretty notorious for our head coaches not really doing that themselves. Whereas other schools in the area, like their head coaches were like calling those schools for them. So all those guys were going to bigger schools, even though, you know, arguably we were all on the same skill level, but because they basically had salesman coaches, and our coach was very, very old school type, like just run the ball kind of style of football. Didn't really like keep up with the times of like how the recruiting game was changing, how football was changing. Like the football style of coaching was fine, but it was like, as far as like people going to college for it, they didn't really like keep up with that. So a lot of how I got to play college football was because of it. So like, yeah. And, you know, the whole recruiting process, coaches coming to meet you, you think you got a good prospect, and you have the whole official, unofficial visits, right? You only get 5 official visits, and those are paid for by the school that's trying to recruit. So they'll fly you out or bring you out to their school, give you the tour, give you the whole thing, you know. Unofficial visits, you show up unannounced, or you show up like you email the coach, hey, I want to come visit. I'm like, well, we can't give you an official visit, but you want to show up for this like recruiting day. And then they have like 5 to 10 guys all showing up on the same day. And then they do like a group tour type of deal. And yeah, like I only had 2 official visits. One was to Mesa State in Colorado, and then the other one was to Idaho State. That one happened very late because my head coach had just gotten there, like late into the whole recruiting season. So yeah, there was just one random day. My dad got a phone call from Don Bailey, my offensive coordinator, and was like, hey, we want to bring him out. We want to bring him out like within 2 weeks. On the same weekend, I had the official visit for that other school. We're like, well, we already got it like set up. He's like, well, we don't really care about D2s. Like, we're, you know, if we're being serious, like we want him to come out. Like, if you don't want him to come out, it's So my dad's like, well, I kind of already gave him my word. He's like, all right, cool. Go on your visit. Like, we'll be in touch. Went on the visit, came back, and I guess my dad hadn't heard from him in like a week or two. And he was like, I just screwed up like my son's chance of going playing Division I football. And he was like, shit. And then all of a sudden, like he called and was just like, hey, we still want to bring him up. Like, let's do this. He's like, okay. And like, but it got to a point where my dad almost screwed it up a second time because he kept calling to like ask him, bug him. Coach was just like, if you call me one more time, you're done. Like, we're not gonna bring him up. Like, I told you we're gonna bring him up. We were serious about this. Like, we were gonna try and offer him a scholarship. If you keep calling me, we're just gonna scratch his name off the list. Got it. Understood.
Yeah, I must have been so excited though.
Yeah, well, he was freaking out.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and it was just very sudden out of the blue. And then I was the only one of my like senior class, like, well, at least for football, I was the only one that like went off to play Division I, which was crazy to me because I never thought of myself as like the best at any one thing. I was always pretty good at sports, but like there were guys on the team that I thought were much better than me that should have easily have gone. Some of them it was like grade issues, things like that. But it was like other guys that were much better athletes.
And just that recruiting process that you explained.
Yeah. If you just like don't
put more effort into that. It's crazy. Now you can, like what you explained with the game film, you just pick up a smartphone and have your siblings or your friends or your parents film you, edit it into some reels and send it up to
like I had to sit there
your page
for I don't know how many hours, like 4 hours sitting there watching my game film, picking out plays that I thought were good, writing them all down on the list, exactly like what disc, what timestamp, how long the clip I wanted, and then send it in. And I had to keep it under a set length of time. So I had to then count all the seconds of the clips and add it up and check to make sure it was like within parameters and then send it, mail it back, then wait. Whereas like, now like people can just do that themselves on a MacBook or just their Google Chrome computer. And like we had to spend so much money just to get that chance. And now you just can do it with your smartphone computer.
Yeah, I think with it being easier to do that now, it's still just as competitive, if not more, because it's easier access. So there's that hurdle that people don't have to overcome like you did. So maybe the market's just infiltrated with so much, so many people's reels and stuff, and just try to like you got to stand out some way. So,
well, that's true too, and it's like obviously like the very top blue chip athletes are not going to be. They're not going to have to do that, right? Because they're playing in super competitive, like high school conferences. And all those teams are going to see them anyways. Like they're
families that will move.
Yeah, move out to Texas, move out to Alabama.
To be around those schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, get in the backyard of all that recruiting.
Yeah, or even in California, you got teams like Mater Dei and Sarah, right? Which, nationally known high schools that these coaches just will go to anyways, just to talk to the head coach, be like, hey, you got anybody that's like worth talking about? And those coaches will like have a list of names, but like, excuse me, these 3 guys for sure. Like, take a look, see what like, because it's a business. Like, and that was one thing that my dad was always like, he's like, don't take anything personal. It's just business. Like if a school passes up on you, just wasn't what they wanted. Like I got recruited by Northern Arizona University. My sister was already going there. So when the tight ends coach showed up to my school to come talk to me, I was like, this would be fantastic. I kind of knew the area a little bit because I had visited my sister, a few times. So it was like one of those things where it would have been like super awesome. And then it just, oh yeah, we're just going to go with our in-state guys because out of state was like 3 times the price. Because even for me to go to Idaho State, if you looked at the in-state price for the guys that were on the team that were from Idaho, to the how much tuition alone, not books or not the football, like because they charged you for the class for being on the team. They charged you like $1,600 because it had to be counted as a class and you got credits, but they didn't count for anything. It was like $16,000 a semester or a year or whatever it was for me to go to Idaho State. Someone who came from Idaho that lived in Meridian or lived in Pocatello, it was like $2,700. So it was like way more. So like you can take that scholarship money and split that between two people. So you can get two more guys on a full scholarship than just the one. So it's like one of those, like, you have to weigh your options. Like, is this one guy going to be a better asset than these two? So he could be great, but if he's not good enough to beat the fact that you can have two instead of one, they're going to go with two instead of one. So it's like it's all math and numbers and money. And, it's the same story. It's the same thing with everything. And so, yeah, I just got lucky.
Yeah. Got picked up and then the bulk began.
Yeah. Then the bulk began because I played tight end and defensive end in high school.
Yeah. The center.
And I got recruited to play tackle.
Oh, okay.
So they wanted me to play like left tackle, right tackle. So I was at most 220 pounds senior year. I think 220 was the heaviest I got to. The lightest weight I know I got to was 208. And that was after the football season. Like I just, you're not playing football, you're not eating as much. So I dropped just like, I don't know, 10-ish pounds just for no reason. I don't know how to explain it. It happened to a bunch of dudes. The minute senior year football was over, people just started losing weight. The weight was gone. So I had dropped down to 208, and then I got the scholarship, and they were like, "Yeah, we want you to play left tackle." I'm like, "What? Yep, we'll get you up to weight. We want you to weigh about like 280." I'm like, "Whoa, all right, okay. Is it gonna matter too much?" I'm like, I got swimming in the spring. Like I got other sports I'm going to play. I was like, is it going to matter that if I'm not 200, like anywhere close to that when I get there? And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll put the weight on. I was like, okay. And yeah, so like I got to ISU and I kind of got bullied and punked by the O-linemen. Like they picked on me a lot because you imagine 6'5", 210-pound me. Everybody else that was on the O-line was like at least 275 pounds. So everybody's way larger than me. I show up, this skinny little kid. They go, "Oh, what are you playing? Like DN? You playing tight end?" I'm like, "No, tackle." And they all just like, "What? Why?" I'm like, I don't know. They just told me to gain weight. And yeah, I put on 30 pounds freshman year. Then another 15 sophomore year. Very fast, unhealthy, like cellulite along my torso. Like I was starting to get dimply.
Just sitting in class sweating. You ever get the meat sweats?
Yeah, I can still get the meat sweats, but I really tried not to. I have to eat an excessive amount.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting to watch because I had to do that just to maintain weight. I would get to a point where like, when you get hiccups when you choke on something, so your body's like, oh, I got to get this out. Yeah, I would eat so much that I would start hiccuping and I was like having to hold my food down. And that was just to maintain weight when I got to, that was just for me to stay at like 275. So I was underweight from where they wanted me. And then when I had gotten there initially, they were like, yeah, we're going to try and get you to 300. And I'm not built for that. I can't. Everybody else that showed up to play O-line was already like pretty heavy and they were just built that way. My metabolism was always so high that it was hard for me to keep that weight on. So yeah, I was eating myself into like nearly puking every night just to like try and hang on to what weight I could. And yeah, it sucked for a good while, but you ask anybody that was in school with me and they're like, yeah, it was pretty disgusting. I'd have like 5 plates of food. Like I would have all my food ready to go. Like I wouldn't eat a plate of food and then go back and get more. I would have it all laid out and ready to go.
Like, this is what I got it down.
Well, it's because if you don't do it, like it's one of those things you figure out. It's like if you eat, that's why people like if you eat slow, they tell you to eat slow so your body can digest easier. Well, it's really so that your brain can catch up to your stomach
Exactly.
and know that you're full when you're actually full. But if you eat fast enough, your brain doesn't catch up with your stomach. So you can overeat and then your stomach's like, wait, we're full, sends the signal up. And then your brain's like, okay, now I can't eat anymore, but you've already finished everything.
Yeah.
That's how I had to eat daily. And yeah, and then it sucked sometimes because it was like, then you get made fun of because I'm like, I can't gain any weight. And everybody's like, oh, it must be so hard. Everyone's like trying to lose weight, and like slim up for summer. And I'm like, I'm trying to be as fat as humanly possible and I can't do it. And they're like, must be so hard to be you. You have to eat.
Yeah, that's interesting. They switch you positions because I think like with your physique, a tight end would have been a great position for you.
Yeah, like me right now, like that 240, 6'5" would
got the height advantage.
Would have been fine. But
decently strong.
But that was the thing about my high school team was we ran the ball a lot. So he didn't utilize the tight ends and like
so your film wasn't in the favor of being a tight end.
I caught 4 passes my senior year.
Yeah.
And I was thrown 5. Or no, excuse me. I was only thrown 4. I caught 3 of them. So like I caught one, like a little drag route. I got like 17 yards on that one. I caught a pop pass that I got a touchdown on. I caught another pop pass, like just a little straight up 5-10 yard. Got like 8 on that one. And then one dropped completely. Yeah. So it was like 1 pop pass touchdown, 1 pop pass, like 10 yards, 1 little out route, 17. And the other one was overthrown and I just missed it. And that was because I had hurt my shoulder. So I had like this weird harness on. So when the ball was overthrown, I raised my arm up and stopped and I couldn't pick it up anymore. So 4 passes total. The rest of my highlight film was me just pushing kids off the screen and like blocking them. So you send these out to coaches and you're like, hey, I want to play DN. I want to play tight end. And all they see on your highlight film is you on defensive end pushing the tackles into the quarterback or pushing guys away from the quarterback. They're like, the next natural progression is like, well, if we get you bulky, we'll just put you on the O line. Because like my film didn't really prove my catching ability. It was just like nice little nest eggs in there. It's like, oh yeah, he actually caught passes. He was just a 6th man on the line. But that's how we ran our offense. Like my junior year, there was my buddy Nate was 6'5" as well. So they put 2 of us on the ends. So we had run a double tight end spread and just ran the ball. So we had 7 linemen and we just ran the ball. The highlight film wasn't going to be anything fancy or spectacular. It was just blocking.
Yeah, I was pulled that picture that you showed me of you all bulked up on the sideline. What game was that? Was that a big game or was that
me and my roommates?
Yeah, you showed a picture. I thought it was your brother.
That was picture day my senior year. So that was before the season started.
Oh, okay.
So that was the heaviest I ever got.
Yeah.
And that was 285 pounds.
Yeah.
Like the next week, like formal practices with school started, I lost 10 pounds, like right out of the gate. So it was like, I couldn't hang on to it. And I was like trying, I was like, like that, how I was saying, like having all those plates set up in the summer, it was harder because I had to do that all myself. So I was eating like whole packages of hot dog or just entire boxes of hamburger helper. So I'd buy those like rolled ground beef packages, the 1 pound ones. I was eating whole boxes of hamburger helper and a protein shake for dinner. And then like 8 hot dogs for lunch. And then breakfast, it was just kind of like a protein shake and a banana or something like that before I had to go to work for the summer. But yeah, it was a lot of eating and it was a lot of just trying not to do anything excessive that would make me lose weight. Like I was mandated to use the school bus system. So I wasn't walking up and down campus.
Yeah.
So if I was at the bottom of the campus in the English building, Holt Arena was up a hill and like like a mile and a half, maybe, from like where we would meet for as an O-line. So I was mandated to take the bus up to the top of campus, so I wasn't burning any extra calories. No, that's 100% serious. Like I wasn't allowed to walk because they didn't want me to lose weight because it was difficult. I'm not built to have that much weight on me on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was tough on your joints and
Yeah. I got hip balancing issues. Like I had to see a chiropractor twice a week when I was playing, and just a bunch of little joint things like a hyperextended elbow, sprained ankle, like my shoulder. I have shoulder issues because they almost popped out. Like it's called a posterior subluxation, so the ball joint wants to like slide out of the back. I partially tore my PCL, so my knee slides back and forth really easily. My toenail is still growing. It's still trying to grow itself out because my right guard stepped on my toe, I think 7-8 times in the middle of a game. We were playing Portland State when I took my, I'm pretty sure I thought it was broken. It hurt so bad. And when I took my cleat off and like looked at my toe, he had cracked the center of the toenail and my toe was all swollen. And like my toenail still never recovered from that. So it was like trying to heal itself out, but it like still is. It's like 10 years later, my toenail's still messed up. So, I mean, that's just one of those things.
Yeah, I know they're making the game a lot safer than it used to be, but still a high risk sport out of, what other sports you could play. So I think when they say like baseball and football are, at least in America, are probably injury prone sports. My son's interested in playing football, and like as far as positions go, I'm trying to keep him in the safer positions.
Don't play whole line.
Yeah.
Or D line.
Yeah. Pretty rough on the body.
Well, have him learn how to kick.
Yeah.
Have him be a kicker.
Yeah.
Be a kicker or a long snapper because those guys will go, 15, 20 years in the NFL. Yes, there's less of those positions available, but long snappers will be like 35 years old, 40 years old, still long snapping. And all they do is what? Let's say their team scores a lot. Yeah, you got a lot of PAT.
Pulling a lot of rugby players for that now.
Are they?
I think so. Like, or at least the style of the kicks they're doing more.
Oh, those roll punts.
Yeah, they're starting to change the game a little bit when it comes to kicking and strategize a little bit more.
We did the roll punt at ISU. It was weird because, it's one of those like punts. So it's like you see the ball, like it's literally tip to tip rolling on the ground.
Yeah.
And at any moment, it'll hit the tip of the ball just right, skyrocket, jump 15 yards, right? So if you try and catch it, well, good luck. That ball's going to it's coming at you like 60 miles an hour. So you have to try and catch it, anticipate those bounces. And we had a punter that was really good at it. And then when he graduated, coach tried to keep doing that. And our next punter just couldn't quite get it down right. Because you had to get it to spin over the top. If you just kicked like a knuckleball, it didn't work. It was very specific, hard to do. And your long snapper had to snap it off to the side a little bit so you could get like a running start. Yeah, it was it's a weird thing. I don't know if it's gonna ever stick in like the big schools, like SEC or or even get to the NFL. They'll probably still do a traditional style punt, but I mean, with the XFL, the Rocks Football League, they're just getting rid of all that stuff because it's unnecessary, right? Like the punt team or like the PAT, right? They're getting rid of all these like traditionally football like positions or just the special teams in general. No kickoffs. Like that's where all the concussions were coming from with like the wedge style kick returns and the wedge breakers. They got rid of that. Well, you can still mess people up on kick returns because like as they're coming back to return, you can have one guy single someone out, which is what we had. Nick Albano used to just clean people. We looked forward to it, right? Like it's very gladiatorial. You're sitting there, you're watching them, you see them coming, and the guy who's running down the field is not looking. Like he's, fixated on whoever's returning the ball, and then out of nowhere, you just get hit by this 200-pound 5'10" linebacker who all he does is lift weights and display. Like he was one of our special teams guys. That's all he did was try and take people's heads off on kick return. So it's like, yeah, get rid of these like certain plays and you'll probably just save people's heads in general, but football is really not. If you want to play football, you just need to be ready to have some long sustaining injuries, something that's going to go wrong. So sorry. Like, well, it's just like he wants to play football, like try and get him in a specialty position that is not going to get him hit a whole lot.
Yeah, he's so young. He's figuring out what he likes still. He's interested in basketball, football, baseball. There's all sorts. He's trying different sports. I'm not going to make him. Yeah, I'm not that dad that's going to make him. You're playing football because I want to live vicariously through you. Because I didn't.
I didn't get to do this. Or I use it. No, my whole philosophy on that is like, let him play everything until about 7th, 8th grade, and then start dialing it in.
Yeah.
Because you can make it. Obviously, like you hear of like the stories like Serena and Venus Williams, or like some of those athletes where they started and they played the one sport forever, right? And that works for some, but like you can get to college football and only having played 1 year of high school. So I had a teammate who did that. He didn't play high school football until his junior or his senior year. Like he played 1-2 years, and then he got to a Division I school. Right? Granted, you kind of have to be like a naturally gifted athlete to pull that off, but it can be done. So if you have 4 or 5 years of time in, as long as you're willing to put in the work for it, that's really all it takes. If you're lazy, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, I was going to have him involved in something. So I was like, yeah, I don't, whatever you want to try out, I support it. But yeah, you're not going to be not involved in some sort of team activity through your schooling. You're not going to be coming home after school and just playing video. You're going to be involved with something throughout most of the year. So, 2 or 3 sports throughout the year, seasonal. But yeah, you said your dad was a big portion of a part of, your college career with football. Did he ever play, or was he like he wanting you to play to try to
live through me?
Yeah,
I think no. So like he never played football.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't ever. That's the weird thing about me and my family is like I'm 6'5". My dad and my mom are both 5'9". And then Miranda, so the sister I share both parents with, she's 6 foot.
Yeah.
No one knows. Everyone's like, what the hell happened? Well, grandpa was 6'4", 6'5", and then grandma was like 5'2", 5'3". So, and then my mom's side of the family, the Mexican side of my family, is like Spanish descent. So like my mom, for being 100% Mexican, is 5'9", which is like, it's like taller. It's like 4-ish inches taller than like the average Hispanic female. And then, like that whole side of the family, it was like they were either short, light-skinned Mexican, or they were tall. So like my Tio Chuy is 6'2". Like, and you look at that side of the family and there's no question that they're Mexican. And then you look at me and you're like, there's no chance that you're Hispanic. I'm like, well, there is. It's like half of my genetics at this point is like Spanish descent. So it's hard for people to believe because it's not like common. But if you go over to like Europe and you go to Spain, like, you're going to see like 6'3" Spaniards with blonde hair, green eyes. Cause that's what my little sister is. She's blonde hair, green eyed, super white, pasty. She took more after dad, but like, so like the Mexican side, all tall. My grandma or my grandpa on my mom's side was supposed He was apparently like 6 foot to 6'2", something like that. So like I have tall in my genetics. It just happened to skip my dad and my aunt. And then so yeah, like I was taller than my dad by like 7th grade, which he hated. And then when I passed my grandpa, then grandpa was pissed because, I mean, he was the tall one. It's a weird tall people thing. Like when you're the tallest one and not really many people around you are taller than you kind of get this like, kind of real uppity, like, oh, I'm taller than everybody kind of feeling. But like, that's one thing that college football like humbles you with, because you find out you're just like, especially on the O-line, everybody's as tall as you are. Everybody's as strong as you are or stronger, right? Like one of the seniors, actually two of the seniors when I got to ISU, one was like 6'8", the other was like 6'6", 6'7". So like you had two massively huge dudes, both NFL caliber like linemen, because they both had invites to NFL teams, but injuries kind of held them back. So it's like you find out real quick. Yeah, 6'5" is really tall, and is a very small percentage of the population that tall. But it's still not like anything special. Like there's a bunch of other people just as tall as me. So it's like, I think, but with my grandpa, he didn't play sports. Like he was an old railroad guy, like blue collar type. So it's like he was the tallest of his friend group. When his grandson passed him up, I think it was one of those like, just because you're taller than me, I won't kick your ass. One of those things. So yeah, it just passed up my parents, and then.
So your dad was in the Army?
No, parents were both Navy.
So both your parents were.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize your mom was too.
Yeah, she was an officer.
Is that how they met?
Yeah, they weren't supposed to.
Oh,
you're not supposed to
enlisted officer.
Yep, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. I know a few of those stories.
Yeah, my dad got out of the Navy so that could happen.
Oh, okay.
Because that's how my mom got to school. She joined the Navy, went to nursing school, then did her time in the Navy. And then that's where she met my dad. My dad got out. So my dad, right at 18, joined the Navy because, his relationship with my grandpa wasn't great. Like grandpa was, had like, he was an alcoholic at times, like abusive type. But that was something that I never like experienced or knew about till I was much older, because, it was one of those things where when I came into the world, grandpa kind of like snapped out of it and like fixed himself so he could be grandpa. So it's like, it's always just stories that I hear. But yeah, dad left the house at 18, joined the Navy. Mom joined the Navy to go to school and then did her time. So that's where they met. And then, yeah, dad got out, and then that's how they made it happen, was he had to get out of the Navy for them to work.
Yeah.
And then
did he end up getting back in at any time?
He did. So yeah, mom eventually got out. But she was in the reserve. She was a reservist for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Dad ended up going back in. I had talked to him like recently about this. Like he had done it because, he needed the money. So he had gone back into the reserves, like, because he was living, the apartments that we lived in were like low income housing. Didn't find that out till I was like 5 years ago. I didn't know. Thought they were just apartments. So yeah, he had done it to try and make more money. Well, while he had done that, like that was when 9/11 happened. So it was like one of those, he got reactivated real fast and then went right back through boot camp. And then
he got sent over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not in the initial wave, but like, yeah, he got sent out. And it sucked because they sent him out, like 3 separate times. So like we had this big emotional like goodbye because he was supposed to get on a boat and head over. He and my mom had made a deal because at this point they were divorced. Like they had they had been for a while, but like they had made a deal that we were still going to go spend time with my stepmom, because at the time they had done like a civil ceremony. They had gotten married right before he left. That we were going to still go to my dad's apartment to spend time with my stepmom. And my mom and my stepmom got along better than my mom and my dad did, which is, it's a weird dynamic when your mom and your stepmom could have been like good friends,
Mm-hmm.
but because of your dad, they didn't like hang out with each other. But they got along great. My mom always respected her. She's like, she treated you like you were her own. So she's like, I'm never going to hate her for that. She's like, your dad's kind of a turd, but it's, it's just, I feel like
How old are you when that happened?
when he deployed.
Yeah, with all, and then getting a stepmom.
So the divorce thing, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It happened early enough. Like I have flashes of like points and like memories of like post breakup, and like, if I can ever get the information out of them, because their parents still very much so like don't like talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can get a piece out of it, then it's like I can put pieces together. So like I remember certain events that like when I hear a new story, I'm like, I remember that. I didn't know what was going on, but I remember that. And that was like, the divorce happened before I turned 4. Because I remember my 4th birthday going to Knott's Berry Farm. And it was just my mom's side of the family. Then he got deployed. What grade? Like 4th grade, 4th or 5th-ish grade. So I don't remember the year, but yeah, he got deployed because I think it was a year after those, 2002. I'd have to do the math. So yeah, he got deployed around 4th, 5th grade. Or maybe it was later. I don't remember. It was one of those things where it's like, yeah, he was gone for a good while.
But you're old enough to kind of feel that hardship of him.
Yeah, because it was like at that point where you're like, he's gone, but you don't really like understand the like gravity of the situation. Like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, he's gone. Like, okay. But like the fact that it was like wartime, he could have just died and never come back.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really register fully until like my sister had written, one of my younger sisters. So my dad and my stepmom had 3 kids, and my sister she's doing a school assignment for her like history class in high school, and she sent me a list of questions asking about 9/11. Like, oh, do you remember what you were doing? What happened? And it was like one of those things where, yeah, I remember waking up for school and like turn on the news because you're looking at the weather forecast to see like, oh, am I going to wear shorts or pants today? Like, especially in California, you get the marine layer. It's cold in the morning. It gets really hot in the afternoons. So it's one of those like, I'm going to prepare for the rest of the day. Well, you turn on the TV and you see the Twin Towers smoking, and just like, again, gravity of the situation. You don't really know what's happening. You're just like, what? And we're 4 hours behind New York. So it's like, once that was already just repeats and reruns. So by the time we got up for school, everything had already happened. Like we weren't seeing the towers hit. Like there were no live feeds. It was just repeats of what they had filmed.
Yeah, a similar experience because my parents were divorced. My had a weird school schedule. I would be at my mom's house one night, and the next morning my dad would pick me up after getting off work because he worked nights, take me to his house. I'd get ready for school, and then he would take me to school. So I'd just like go in between houses. But yeah, I woke up, turned on the TV. I was always obsessed with New York City and skyscrapers as a kid. So when I saw that, I was like, that looks weird. Didn't realize a plane had hit it yet.
Yeah.
And then I went to my dad's house. We turned on the news and we're watching the live. He just kept us out of school that day.
Yeah, I think we ended up going to school.
He didn't want us to go to school that day. So
yeah, I still ended up going, but that's
that was just such an eerie feeling that whole. I mean, it was months. Yeah, but that first week for sure was eerie. I remember the mood of the teachers and all that stuff. We did like a a money drive to try to raise money for the families and stuff like that. I remember every school in America was trying to send money to the families involved, first responders. But yeah, I didn't have any family that was of age to go fight or anything like that. I was like 5 or 6 when it happened.
Were you that young?
Yeah, I think it was second grade or third grade. I was in third grade, I think, when it happened, second or third grade. But I just remember my dad just like turning super patriotic during that period.
Everybody was like,
all of America was like united, getting those ribbons on the cars, flying the flags.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was an interesting time for a while. But yeah, I was just curious, your dad being in the military, if you ever suggested or recommended or did not recommend the military, because you never went that route. What did he have to say about it? Did you ever ask him questions?
Yeah, because I mean, in high school, like playing football, like military never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
After college, right? Obviously, so I went to school for teaching. That didn't work, right? So then it was kind of like I was trying to find what my career was going to be. So like there were times where I was like seriously considering joining the military. Like I had gone to the recruiters' offices and like talked to them, but I kind of got that vibe like they had hit their quota for the month, or like they just didn't. They did not care. They gave $0 when I walked in, and they were just like, "Yeah, like you got to weigh this much, and you got to do this, and blah blah." And like at the time, I was like 240, so I was like the same weight as I am now, but I hadn't been working out, so I was like probably a higher body fat percentage. And they're like, "Well, you got to get under this weight to even be considered to even go."
Yeah, the opposite problem.
I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, because like as far as like not like in general, like I'm talking about like you see a guy who like looks fairly in, like I wasn't like in any good shape. I wasn't working out at the time, but it's like I didn't look like I was fat in like
people can wear the same weight differently.
Yeah.
You can take a 250-pound person and
redistribute it, make them look like way bigger than they should be. But it's
you're
like,
an athlete in nature.
And I didn't have that issue, and they were just like, "Yeah, no, you're not going." I was like, "That's kind of dumb. Like, there's no like alternate test. Like, it's just you have to be this flat weight." Which for me, being 230 pounds, seemed like an impossible task because I was like 2 years out of college. I was like 285. I got down to like 250 or 260. So it was like, would have had to lose another 30 pounds just to even be a possibility. And it just got the like, they just didn't care. The recruiters really didn't care. At least the ones in the office that I walked into, like they were just like, "Yeah, well, you don't."
I bet they do now. Retention.
Oh yeah.
We're having retention issues, and
they're probably trying to like get anybody, right? So it's like
changing tattoo policies and all sorts of stuff to get people in,
which I thought was weird. Everybody I knew that was in the military had tattoos. Like,
they've changed it so many times.
My dad had tattoos. My uncle, all my military uncles, right? It's all these.
Yeah, wartime, they're gonna make it easier to get in, and then when they're non-wartime but have retention recruiting issues, they'll do the same.
I don't understand the whole tattoo thing. It's like, you're training killers and you're concerned that they have a snake on their forearm. But I don't know. It's just like, I understand there's still a need to be professional, but you can be professional and have tattoos.
You get different sergeant majors of the Army that care about different things. Some like to come in and make one big policy change right when before they get out. So
everyone wants to leave their mark, but it's like to some extent, it's like it's not so much about leaving marks. If you are training people to defend the country, it's like tattoos are not. Well, in my opinion, tattoos aren't the hill to die on.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be the biggest focus you have.
And I think it's definitely less focus now. So it's
I mean,
low on the
unless obviously you have like hate speech, like you got swastikas and things like that. It's like, okay, maybe you're not the best person to have here because you're gonna have obvious problems with people that might be in your unit. Like, so unless it's those kinds of tattoos, like
Yeah.
skinhead, like
Mhm.
racist type. All right.
Yeah.
You can just not come in. Like, we just don't let those people in. But everybody else that has like just like a dragon tattoo or like something or other, okay, get over it. It's like, it's just a tattoo. Especially if it's like under your clothes. Is that like something that the army or the military was like big on? Like, if you had a covered up tattoo, where they still jump in the gun?
When I joined, you have to get a physical before you leave. When I joined, yeah, the tattoo is part of the physical. So the regulation when I joined was more strict than it is now.
So you can have any tattoos on you at all?
No, you could. You could. It was just the regulation was a little bit different, but yeah, the type of tattoo mattered. It couldn't be racially motivated,
Right.
or there was some other stipulations, gang tattoos,
Mhm.
yeah, just crude tattoos in nature. But yeah, for the most part,
Yeah, it was just like they had to
Yeah,
run
you
it through
can-
a screening process.
yeah, it was more just
Keep it
can't
simple.
go past your wrist, no necks. No, I think they're allowing neck tattoos now. I'm not positive. I could be wrong on that, but I think the only finger tattoo you could have was like the wedding band or initials. Or
Oh, okay.
yeah, you could have that. But I mean, I've been to schoolings around the States and seen special forces units. They're not as strict on it. I've seen like full hand tatted special SF guys. And then, yeah, I've worked with other countries, other nations and stuff, militaries, and you'll have some that are let them grow full beards and
Yeah.
yeah,
Because it's like,
tats
it
and
can
all
be
that
a
stuff.
cultural thing too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, especially tattoos,
Mhm.
because like Polynesian cultures, right? Tattooing is like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a big part of their culture. So like, I had,
Yeah, they will. I think they will respect that, and also they have religion and cultural. So for
Mhm.
like for the hair and facial hair, because you'll have some people with turbans, some people with full beards,
yeah,
stuff like that. But yeah, so as far as like that process, your interest in your dad, did he kind of
yeah, they
tell
were,
you to go another
they were
direction?
both against it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they weren't, they're like, if you are going to do this, join the Air Force.
Yeah.
Which both were Navy.
Mhm.
And they're like, if you're going to do it, Air Force first, then Navy, and then don't. Like, they were both just like, not the Army, not the Marine Corps. And my dad was a corpsman, so he deployed with the Marines to Afghanistan and Kuwait. So I was just like, why not them? And he's like, those guys are infantry. He's like, you want to be front lines? Then that's who you join with. He's like, Air Force is going to be better with families. They're going to move you to the middle of nowhere because that's where all the air bases are. But they're going to keep you, your wife, your family. Like, you'll be in the same spot. The Navy's going to suck because they're going to put you on a boat for 9 months away from everybody with barely any contact. And then the other two branches, yeah, you're going to be front line. So it was like, they're like, if you do it, join the Air Force. And at the time, you get this weird, like, growing up with nothing but Navy and Marine Corps, it's like all my, all the uncles. So I have like a Uncle Dane, looks like Frozone, right? 6'4", bald black guy. Uncle Ray's like a 5'2" Filipino. Uncle Soto's 6'3", big burly white dude, but looks Mexican. So it's like very strange assortment of, military uncles. Uncle Ferris, like a 6-foot white New Yorker. So it's like random family members, right? So you have this like weird loyalty to like the branch specifically. So when I'm told, it's like, don't join either of the two branches that are associated with our family, join the one that, right, they all would joke about, right? Like being a Blue Falcon and like all that military joking kind of stuff. And I was just like, that's weird. But like, I could see their point. And then it just like never happened, right? Because like, it was more so like I couldn't figure out what I was going to do with my life and like work, job stuff. Teaching didn't work out. And then the sales job I was doing didn't really work out. And then I kind of got into, started like a warehouse job. And like, that was like killing me because it was just like the people I worked with didn't care. And it was like, you could try and propose solutions. And it was just like, try and offer help. And it got shot down because my supervisor was a real piece of work. And so it was one of those, like, I tried to I wrote out a schedule for everybody to work 410s, but help the evening guy so he wouldn't get slammed with like shift change at some of the nursing home facilities. Cause that's what we dealt with was hospice care equipment. And come 4 o'clock, come 5 o'clock, right? Shift change would start to happen and they would just start ordering crap left and right, like all over the valley. Well, by that point, everybody's 9 to 5. So there's only one guy who's now dealing with all the nonsense at the end of the day. And I wrote out a schedule to basically have 2 people on shift at that point. So you could have people help deal with that, like the last minute wave of like med techs and nurses that weren't paying attention. Now they need to get like something ordered for a patient. And then they looked at it and they're like, well, if everybody is going to work 410s, nobody wants to have Monday off. And they just scrapped. So it was like, all right, fine, whatever. But it was just like killing me. Like I hated it. I was causing problems and like getting written up because I was causing problems with facility people because I was being accused of like trying to gain access to like storage rooms that they were holding our equipment in. But I was asking staff to open their doors. It's like, hey, can you get into this room right here and grab me this pump with this number? But the chick who is basically in direct control of that door thought I was trying to get the access code. I'm like, I'm not trying to get the code. I just want the equipment. So I asked someone else because you were busy. It was a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it.
Not your place.
Well, it was because it was like I was supposed to be picking up equipment, but it was one of those things where it's like, I'm not a big fan of being accused of like trying to steal or like doing something that I wasn't doing.
Sounds like maybe you gave a damn and you just needed a job with more purpose. So is that you try firefighting after that? Is that how you got into that?
When I was at that job, that's when I was I had started going to EMT class. So I was doing that part-time and I got into the fire academy and then they were giving me hell for that too, because one of the first, so when I got into that academy, I had like the position of the weekend on-call driver opened up. So I had taken that so I could work 312s and still be in the fire academy while my wife was pregnant with our first kid. So I was like, wife's pregnant, I'm working a full-time job, and I'm in the fire academy through CWI, trying to like get this going so I could quit this job. And they were giving me hell because I told them, I was like, hey, Monday morning, I can't take calls like from like 5 a.m. on. Like anything before then, I can maybe take it and make it to the academy on time. But it's like anything after 5, I'm not taking. Not answering the phone. I'm like, someone else is going to have to do it. Told them that, gave them a heads up. Like one of the first Mondays of my academy, getting calls for a bed, like something relating to a bed. Call my supervisor. He's not answering. Tried calling everybody. Like a couple people that I work with, no one's answering. Because they knew, right? If I'm calling, someone needs, like I would need help with something. There's a bunch of things that I was supposed to, by protocol and by rules, required to have someone help me with. And they just wouldn't ever send somebody to help me because no one wanted to come in. No one wanted to get overtime, or like no one wanted the extra work. So I'm trying to call people, tell them, hey, I can't take this call. I got to be at this place. And they didn't listen. And then they tried to write me up for that because I didn't answer the call. I'm like, I'm not going to sign this because I told you guys I couldn't do Monday morning calls. And you guys didn't listen. I tried calling you all to have someone else come and do it. And no one listened. No one's answering my phone calls because you guys don't want to deal with whatever it is that I need help with. Yeah. So they were just like trying to, I don't know. It was a bunch of management issues and it was just obnoxious to deal with. All while I'm trying to study for class, and wife's hormonal and pregnant. She's stressed out. I'm stressed out. And then they're trying to like give me heck at work because I'm trying to juggle it all. And then they just, yeah, no one there cared. At least my supervisors and anybody in the warehouse didn't care. Like everything was falling apart. So it was just like biding my time, trying to get out. And then COVID hit. And then I was let go due to, financial reasons. But really, it was like, besides my own supervisor and our repair guy, I was like the only one that knew how to do everything and clean everything. But yet, I was the first one to be let go. So it was like, because I wasn't just kissing everybody's ass and, bending over backwards to just make everybody in the valley happy. They just let me go.
It seems like that job during COVID would be more demanding. Or
It wasn't
Yeah.
at first. And
maybe
then
it got to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they figured out like if they just shipped off, well, with the masks and everything, how they were doing the N95s, and if you put it in the UV like heaters,
Yeah.
it would like cook off the germs, right? But apparently you can't kill COVID. They were sending off those UV heaters or like whatever those like cleaners were. So they had bought a bunch of them, and then they were sending those out on rentals, and they made a bunch of money apparently. So like they boomed months later, but up until that point, like everybody hunkered down. So you weren't sending out new equipment, and if you were, which was another reason why I got in trouble a second time because of COVID rules, I was having to drop off oxygen tanks to a facility. And I was like, well, I need to get into the room so I can swap out the tanks and I can look at these codes. And they're like, well, we're not letting you in. Okay. Well, then you're going to have to bring me all the tanks. I'm like, okay. They brought me the wrong tanks. I'm like, you got to go back. They go back. They bring me the right tanks. I had stepped through the second set of double doors. So like this was before everyone had their screening processes and everything. They had 2 sets of double doors, right? In between the 2 doors was like a bench or whatever. And then, so I was sitting there. I stepped through that second set of double doors, and that's it. And there was like one guy that was freaking out. You can't be in here. And I'm like, I'm not like going anywhere else. I'm just standing right here. To the point where like they were almost pushing me back out through the doors, saying that like obviously I was the one contaminated. And this was the whole thing that like twisted me up about COVID was everyone was so freaking out about like contaminating, going from inside to outside. I was like literally not two feet inside that door with my tanks, all just trying to swap out the tanks that I was touching, that I had in the van with me. But meanwhile, like if I was sitting in between those 2 double doors, people were just walking in and out, no problem. Like people who had worked there, or even like people who live there, like that were patients, they were walking in and out, no problem, walking right past me. Like, so it was like very confusing and hypocritical. That was like I was getting yelled at and written up for standing 2 feet inside the building when I'm just trying to give someone their oxygen tanks. But the staff themselves were so incompetent that they didn't know what tanks I was supposed to like. They didn't know who, they didn't know what kind of tanks. I'm like, these big tanks right here, I need you to bring me all of this patient's tanks. Because those facilities are like, they're misusing those tanks sometimes. Like they're giving, because it's a prescription grade. Like it's a prescription. Oxygen is a prescription. And they would take some tanks and move them to other patients because they felt they needed them, but that patient didn't have a prescription. So, like the med techs or whoever else, like they didn't know who was supposed to have what. They just knew they had them. But if one patient ran out and they didn't want to order more, they would just take some from another patient who wasn't using a whole lot of theirs that month or that week or whatever, and then just take them. So it was like a whole, that job was not good for me. Super toxic. It was, I had a bad attitude for the most part, but it wasn't like completely without reason, but also it was like a lot of like management they just didn't care. And if I asked for help, I didn't get any. So it was like I was doing a lot of things that were um, risky. Like I was lifting beds up into the bed of the vans that I wasn't supposed to by myself. Like we literally had rules and policies in place to make it so that you had a second person to help you. Never got a second person. Always had to do it myself. So I'm like either going to damage property or damage myself trying to get the job done because, yeah, cared. It was just bad time.
COVID might have been the one good thing for you.
It was.
You had to go through the academy though. So how was
No,
how
it was
that
right
experience?
before COVID.
Oh, okay.
Graduated from academy 2019 December.
Oh, okay.
Then COVID really hit like April of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody went into lockdown. So it was like, it was awful timing to try and find a job in EMS or in the fire service because everybody locked down. There were no new jobs coming out. There was nobody was retiring, right? They were like, never mind, right? This is like the worst time to retire when like the world went into a lockdown. So it was like, now I have this, like I got these certificates. I got this. I went through all this schooling. I did all this, basically a whole year of classwork and no jobs. And that didn't change for like 2 years. And it sucked. It was pretty rough. It was like, I worked as an Amazon driver for a little bit. And I was a server at Rudy's. And then I got a job with Victory Transportation. And I was doing that for almost 2 years before I got on it. And then that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Literally on the 7th.
Yeah. I think you found your career you like.
Yeah. So this is the longest, these 2 years, it's the longest I've been with any one job without wanting to just run my car off the road. Teaching and that, I don't want to say the name of the company, but it was, that hospice equipment job and teaching. Both jobs, just talking about them, like, makes me anxious.
Yeah, my wife does the substitute teaching. She enjoys it for the most part, but yeah, it can be challenging, especially when you're dealing with sub comes in and the class is like they're either going to take advantage of the sub or they're going to like, she's a cool sub, let's play it cool. But
no, that never. I never got that lucky. My subs were either like completely useless or so militant that the kids didn't get anything done because the subs own like nonsense. Like I had one that literally made the kids stand outside in line.
Mm-hmm.
As they walked in, they had to say hello and like one other thing. If someone stuttered or didn't say it, hello, and then right to this thing, everybody went back out, stood out, and did it again. Then they get inside, and then she would take roll, and she would call out a name. They would say here, and then like one interesting thing about it, if they stuttered, if they took too long, everybody started out. And almost every class was like, we did that for like 30 to 40 minutes. And then she gave us the assignment. Because I came back, I was like, all right, everybody turn in. They're like, we're not done. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I made it so stupid and so simple. There's no way you guys aren't done. And they were like, then they all explained what she did. And I was just like, so yeah, some subs, brain dead. They just need a pulse. Others, great. Things got done. You're like, cool, sweet.
Yeah.
But it's a toss up whether or not you're going to get the same sub.
Yeah, my wife, she tends to just be at the same school or a few different specific schools because they're like, yeah, we like you. We're going to put you on our recommended list.
Yeah.
So she's like, hey, are you available 2 weeks from now?
And that's how some subs can get full-time teaching jobs, is because like they make such a name for themselves at that school, and like even the kids know who they are. So it's like kids will see them around the halls and be like, whose class are you in today? And the sub will tell them, and word spreads, and then everybody's like kind of excited for it because most subs are trying to be teachers, and that's the way to get in. If you're not like, if you don't find the job right away, it's kind of like volunteering or doing like a reserve program, fire service, before you can get on full time at a department. It's like you got to find some way to keep doing what you want to do until you can actually get in. So yeah, most of the subs and like sub positions, like people who are trying to be teachers that haven't quite gotten the full spot. So it's like, yeah, they show up, they interview, and they basically are like active interview every time they're in the classroom. So yeah, it's not for everybody. That's not for me.
Yeah, I know I would not be good at other people's kids.
Like, I feel like I'm good with people, and I think I'm a good teacher. Like, I can explain things well, but it has to be with someone who wants to actively learn the thing that I'm teaching. If it's full of a bunch of cocky 18-year-olds, it's not going to work. You like teach, and that's what makes teaching so hard is you have to try and get these kids motivated. But some of them really don't care. Like some of the students I had were halfway out their own front door, like, and not by their own doing. Like their parents were kicking them out of the house, and like they were working full-time jobs after school, and it was like they're like, oh well, I got to pay for my car and my insurance. I'm like, why are you paying for your own insurance? Like you're what, 18, if that? And they're like, I'm 16. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like your job right now is school. And if you played sports, like even more so. It's like some of these kids, like I lost a senior because he got kicked out of his own house, so he had to drop out. I lost two others to pregnancy. So I lost a senior and a sophomore to pregnancy. And then like, yeah, the rest of them, like the other couple kids just kind of fell. They just fell out of school. Like they just dropped out. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Just stopped showing up. And you don't really ask questions because no one gives them to you anyways. It's like, you can't start asking about personal information about students. So
yeah, that's probably one of the harder parts about teachers, especially if you have hard. You see what's going on in home life, and there's not a whole lot you can do.
Yep, because it's intrusive, and parents will freak out.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have the teachers that cross it intentionally. They're trying to push their ideas on students nowadays.
Yeah, that's
because I would say parents are less involved than they used to be.
Well, and that was, and then that's the thing that I had to kind of ran into is like, it's very much so like 50-50. The parents either care or they don't. And you can tell. It's very obvious which ones don't.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess there's the in the middle kids. Like parents don't show up to like parent teacher conferences, but the kids do well in school. So it's like, they're kind of just like, it's a bell curve. Like most of your kids are going to be pretty okay. Right. And then you have those outliers who are like, even really good students, parents are showing up to parent teacher conferences like, what can you do better? It's like, this is the best kid in my class. Like they never bug me, and they're like, they are actively engaged. Like, why are you here? So it's like you looking at these parents like, why are you wasting my time?
Just expect excellence.
Yeah. Well, they're like way over the top. Because that's what happened when I was student teaching. And this was probably another big problem I had was my student teaching. I had AP kids and honors freshmen. So I had senior AP students. So they were all planning on going to college. They were all smart kids. They all knew what they were doing. And the freshman class, like they were all honors kids. So they were all like the smarter kids, and they were all like motivated, and they wanted to read and talk and do all this stuff. Then I got out into the real world, and I was teaching general, just bare bones English. So they literally were just like, whatever is not covered by our like tenured teachers, we'll give to him, which is a problem because I was 23 going into teaching with 18-year-old kids.
Yeah, that'd be such a weird dynamic.
Yeah. Well, they would ask that. Oh, you're only 5 years older than us. Like, what's the difference? Like, what's different between us? I'm like, yeah. And that reaction right there, that like, are you serious? Because like the first thing I told him was like, graduated high school? Like, oh, there's one. Like, how many degrees do you have from college? None. Cool. Got 2. Play college sports? No. You live on your own? No. Are you financially independent from your parents? And then you get that one kid. Yeah. It's like, obviously not you, smart ass, but it's like the general like population of you seniors are all 100% dependent on someone else. We are not the same, even though we're 5 years apart. Like, sure, if some of us were in college at the same time, 100%, probably not what I should be saying, but it's like some of my students, yeah, I could very easily have like run into them like out in public right now and just chat and bullshit and like talk to them. Some of them though, yeah, it'd be active avoidance. Would just really not want to talk to them because I don't want to say hate, 'cause that's a pretty strong word, but it's like they were such a pain in my ass. It's like, like you try and like get along with somebody for so long and then they just like don't care. It's like, fine. I don't. It was such an awful experience. Bunch of
Yeah. Wanted to teach, but maybe that wasn't the right environment for you. Because I think that with the fire service, there's a lot of opportunity to teach in ways, whether you're passing on information and knowledge to a new guy or to someone, one of your peers that, you have a skill set, a strength in one area, and he wants to absorb some of that from you because, yeah, we're always learning and improving. So, yeah, I'd say just funnel it into that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Because they're passionate. They want to be there. People in the fire service tick a certain way. So, for the most part, we all have that within us. Oh,
Yeah, and I think that was probably the biggest thing was like just it was more so what I was teaching, but it was like who I was teaching. The sophomores I didn't really have that much of a problem with, but like younger kids, you can kind of spook them into, oh, hey, like, well, obviously, like it's a little bit more naivete. Like they don't know what you know, and they aren't so cocky that they're like, I know more than you. And the seniors, it was just like false arrogance. It was like, I do know more than you, even though I don't. And then they challenge everything. They're just gonna like resist and cry, complain about everything. And yeah, it just didn't work out. So teaching didn't work. And then yeah, but I'm like one of those like where the next thing I try is like supposed to be the end all be all. So every job I was at for at least a year or more, because I'm not the type. It's like I don't like starting a job and then quitting 3 months later. Like every job I've had, I was there for like at least a year, except for Amazon. Amazon was 3 months. That was because I got a different job. Well, I started working at Rudy's, and I was at Rudy's for almost 2 years. And at Victory for a year while I was at Rudy's still. So it was like, I don't really count Amazon. I don't think I put them on a resume job application for a while.
I know a few people worked for Amazon doing the deliveries. It's rough.
Yeah, it's very much so like you're a number on a piece of paper. High turnover rates. They don't really care. They just care that their safety rating through their little phone app that they make you download and their dash cams that literally ding you for making a right turn too sharply. Like it's ridiculous. Like if you accelerate too fast, you get ding on your driver report.
Gotta park the vehicle a certain order.
Yeah, if you hit the brakes too fast, they ding. If you turn too sharply, they ding you. If you bump the curb with your tire, they ding you. And then I mean it's a noticeable ding because then you're like your driver report or your driver rating will go from like green to like red in like 3 marks, and then they fire you for that. Like if it happens too often, they'll fire you, and then yeah, that's just it. You got to deliver.
Did you go out with a bang? You just try to get your score as low as possible in that one day.
I should have. That would have been funny, but that's not worth it. Right? Because it probably would have made me pay for whatever if I damaged the vehicles in any way. But yeah, they've become so efficient that it's like if you can't run as a part of the machine, like they get you gone.
I've heard you get punished almost in a way for being a good driver, good employer, because you finish your run and then let's increase your load.
Yep.
Make
So
you
how
work
they
even
explained
harder.
it to me was like
Yeah.
you do one assist or you give one assist, right? So it's like at some point, like I was under the impression it's like, oh, okay. Like during my trial route, they're like, I will give you an easy route for you to kind of get used to things and blah blah blah. It's like, all right, cool. If you get done early, right, you run an assist and you can be done for the day. So I was like, sweet. So I'd like be flying and be done by like 3, 4 o'clock. Started at like 10. Well, once that trial route ran out, my like deliveries that I had to do doubled in size. They were farther away. And I was like barely being done by 7, which was it was a 10-hour day. So it was like I would barely get to that 10-hour, like, and I wouldn't be anywhere close to being done. They were requiring you to like park the van, shut it off between every single stop.
Yeah.
And you could literally have 4 houses like either right next to each other. So you could do something like that. Just park it, put your hazards on, back and forth to your van to each of the houses and do that. But like my area, it was like Caldwell-ish, Middleton. Well, the houses had like a mile between them. And if you're trying to save time, you don't want to start your car like, and you had to do it in a certain order because of that phone, because of the camera. Like you couldn't start your car without your seatbelt on. If you started the car and then didn't put your seatbelt on before that, it would ding you. And then if you touched your phone at all while you're driving, it would ding you like twice, even if you were just changing the music. Even if you were using like the car's dash system to like connect to Bluetooth and change it, ding you. Anything that happened on your phone, it would ding you on that app. And I think they banned that app. So like because people started saying, well, you can't make me use my personal phone. Yada yada yada. But
do you ever have any interesting customer encounters or?
No, because I was doing it during COVID. So it was just a bunch of like troll bridges. They would just sit there at that window by their front door, watch you. You would wave at them. They would dive behind the door. You would drop their package off, take the picture on the little phone app on the phone that they would give you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You'd scan it, picture, send. You'd turn around. They'd be staring back through the window. You wave at them again. They dive behind the door. The minute you turned your back, you hear door open, package slammed shut. And it was just like the most bizarre thing, right? Because everyone's freaking out about COVID again. And it was like, I've been in this van, right, in the middle of summer. So it's 110 degrees. I'm sweating. I'm in a hot metal box. Every time I have to shut the van off, all the cold air's gone. So you got to leave the van running, leave the AC on full blast. I'm sweating all over these boxes. You're scared about a respiratory disease. And I'm handing you boxes that I'm like actively sweating on and in a van where my windows are up. I've got the air recirculation button pushed on it. So it's like, there's no air leaving. So I'm like breathing in this van. It was so confusing to me because it was like people would treat it like the plague, which I'm sure in the bigger cities, it was a much bigger deal. I saw hospitals filled up, but me dropping off your package from Amazon, that box has been touched by, I don't know how many people just in the morning that we got it to you. But just saying hi to somebody was like grounds for avoidance.
Yeah, it's already bad enough before.
But yeah, they'll sit there and watch you grab the package and they'll wait for you to turn around and leave and not say thank you, not say hey. Like that's probably one of those weird things about it was just and nobody wants to interact. All you had to say was like, hey, thanks. Hey, no problem, bye. But people are weird. They'll just sit there and watch you do your job.
Door cracks open. It's like one hand grabs the package, pulls it in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I mean, we ordered a lot of Amazon through everything, and we still do. Just because with the Airbnb, we have to get our supplies. We just have it on subscription, but yeah, it was quite the adjustment at first because we were a couple that initially we took it seriously, and then we started realizing the red flags and like, okay, I don't think this is as bad as we think it is.
Yeah.
Then you start getting past judgment from people who are disagreeing, and yeah, it's just like you almost feel guilty for going out and about, but we're young, healthy, we're doing our part. As a first responder, that was interesting to go 2 years without a COVID exposure, and then finally we got some exposures. But
Yeah.
it was just like, what?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. And like,
so
well, and that was the thing. Like when I worked for Victory, right? Like up until that point, I was like, I don't see it, right? My mom and everybody I know is from LA, so they're like, my mom worked in the hospital, and she's like, our ICU is packed. Like we don't have room for people. I'm like, all right. Right. And then I didn't really understand it till I started working the ambulance with Victory, and we were like going into these ICUs and like pulling people out that had been like intubated and like medically induced comas to try and like help them out because their lungs were just giving out on them. Right. And some people it affected much harder than others. So I like kind of saw both sides of it, but again, it was like those people were like for the most part, the people that we were picking up to either take home or take to ICUs or move them around, they were all like, they all had pre-existing health conditions. Like, so it was one of those things where it's like, I only had one out of all of the people that we transported, only one.
That may have been surprising. Or...
Yeah, one guy had no past pertinent health history. Like it was, what happened? He got COVID, and that was it. Like, he was the only one. But other than that, it was like everybody else had like COPD or like congestive heart failure or the myocarditis or pericarditis. Like they had something in their chest that like just added to the problem, and that's what like. They were just intubating everybody. Like everybody was getting put on oxygen, and that was the problem. So you had to taper them off, but it's like, it was problematic. But yeah, it was a wild time.
Yeah, sure was. I know one thing for sure, I'm not going to fall for it again. As far as everything that happened, it's, I think we've been able to go through something, and, you've got two groups of people, the ones that are smart enough to understand that, okay, we gotta keep the young, healthy people, keeping the nation going. And, totally respect my elders, my grandparents. It was really tough not seeing them for such a long time. But they were susceptible, but I wasn't. So just not going to be able to do that.
It was just silly because it was like, oh, well, it lasts on the surface. Like it was just like everything that they thought about it has been proven wrong since. And now it's like people are still saying, well, COVID's a big problem. You can literally go to Walmart and buy a can of Lysol. Kills 99% of germs and COVID. Like, so all our basic cleaners kill COVID now, but it's apparently like, it's still apparently a huge problem. It's like, but now the vaccine is being shown to cause, myocarditis, and like you're having, guys our age and younger than us, like just drop with heart attacks and just, it's like it's like now they're finding that it was the vaccine that caused it, not COVID, but the solution to COVID. And yeah, it's
a lot of people made a lot of money. I remember Joe Rogan getting the backlash for his treatments.
Yeah, for the ivermectin.
Yeah. I was like, maybe that was the solution.
Well, and then CNN had edited that video of him to make him look like yellow.
Yeah. The exposure.
Yeah.
The tinting. Yeah. Funny.
And it's just, yeah, they try to go after him hard. He's like, they're stupid. Like, I'm not going to just take whatever I willy nilly. He's like, I'm not taking horse medicine or the ivermectin, like, at least for like the horse dewormer part of it, right? It was like the dosage, like, and it was a specific strand of it that was used for horses. And the ivermectin he used was like, obviously, like much less, but those weren't things that were covered by the media. They were just like, oh, he's taking horse dewormer. He's spreading misinformation. It doesn't matter what he says. He's wrong. But I feel like just the fact that he reads, and like he does all these podcasts, like he reads up on all this stuff. He's not going into it blind. And to completely discredit him as a news reporter when you're not the one doing the research, someone else is, it seems pretty hypocritical. So it's one of those, like, you gotta kind of have to look it up for yourself. But it's hard to do that when control, like Google, you have to go to like Ask Jeeves or what's the DuckDuckGo?
I think so.
You have to go to some third party search engine to try and find articles that are like actually neutral.
Yeah. Well, there's a shift for sure. There's a shift in the long format conversations and people on the other side speaking louder, because you've had the last few years the extremists on the one side just speaking so loudly. They have the access and they tend to have it's like a social confidence, and they're more willing to speak louder. If we're more conservative in nature, it's not really something that is typical.
Yeah.
So, but people are realizing that it's almost at this point where the country's going, it's a responsibility.
I think it was like that
to-
mob mentality thing. It's like, I know that there's a wave of people behind me that will instantly start like fighting for me because someone just simply disagreed with what I said. And yeah, it's like people who were more conservative, like, or just like, let's say, respecting of other ideas. It's like, all right, well, that's them. I don't have to be that way, so I'm just going to stay out of it. We stayed out of it long enough that it became a problem. Now it's like, all right, well, we voice our opinion against something, but like the other side, or it's so volatile now. It's like if you say something that someone doesn't agree with, you're instantly like public enemy number one. And that's on both sides, because it's like you can't be like, people don't allow you to be neutral. So it's like you have to pick a side or just be crucified. Essentially, it's like, right, with the cancel culture and all that stuff. It's like, you can't be, or there's no gray. It's all black and white. So it's like, even if I agree with one point of something, but I'm like, well, but what about this? Right now, it's like, oh, you're an enemy, or you are the devil, or you're this, you're that. Like, there's no room for discussion. And I think that's my biggest problem. It's like, I'll have an open discussion. I'll talk about difficult things. There needs to be some level of respect between both parties. Otherwise, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't learn to think for yourself and to have your own ideas. You just end up becoming a sheep if you can't have the opposing conversation, the difficult questions going both ways. I might believe something. I'm proposed difficult questions. It really tests my belief if I can't answer those, or it makes me think like, okay, well, maybe I got a lot of understanding that I don't have. It's you got to be careful too with what you do follow, the echo chamber of information. So yeah, it goes both ways, but yeah, there's definitely a shift for the better, I think, with the shift of long format podcasts. I think traditional news media is becoming obsolete in a way.
Well, yeah, because people are starting to. Sorry.
Yeah, people are just figuring out it's all smoke and mirrors. It's very choreographed. It's very shallow.
It's super
it's like, we're going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So
like they want clicks, right? It's all clickbaity, right? The news is clickbait, and so they're just like people who are like, well, I just want to know, right? So basically, like reading a news article, but people talking about it, right? So having people on a podcast where you can like just actually delve into the actual conversation and like finer details of these things
Mm-hmm.
instead of just like broad spectrum, like broad brushes. Like you're going to talk about like on the news, right? They're going to talk about the school shooter for what, 30 seconds. And then, oh, we'll cover it later tonight at 11. It's like, I mean, do you have enough information to talk about it right now? Like, why are we even talking about this squirrel that jet ski on a motor little remote control boat? It's like, no one cares about the puff pieces. Yeah, the puff pieces are nice to an extent, right? But yeah, there's so much going on now. It's like, I don't know.
It's tough. It's I mean, because think about it. You know, we're sitting here, we're having a conversation. Like, let's sit in front of each other. There's no agenda. It's just like, what are we going to discover through this conversation? You go on the news, and yeah, you're being pushed information from a place you've never heard of or you don't have any connection to,
Yeah.
and we're just not. We haven't adapted to that ability yet, or that just ultra exposure to information. Just having so much information thrown at us at one time. It's just like, you know, we're meant to be close knit and have that community. So it's just like you see everything that's going on across the world. Like 100 years ago, it's going to take weeks to have that information.
Yeah.
It's just at your fingertips now.
Yeah, it's at our fingertips, but it's like, because it's at our fingertips, like no one's willing to have an open conversation because they can just go online.
Yeah.
And see something that 100% backs their own like ideas. So it's like, yeah, I can't even like, you know, there's a movie with Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson called The Internship.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, one of the lines that Owen Wilson says, I loved it, right? But it's like Google single-handedly ruined my ability to bullshit. Because like I can say things fairly confidently to a level that like people will believe it. But like with my wife, she just pulls up her phone and starts looking at it. And she's like, you're wrong. It's not about being right? It's just about like, well, sometimes I'm like, well, no, even if I do think that something is a certain way, and then she looks it up to be wrong, it becomes like this, like almost like combative style of like, no, you're wrong. I'm right. So I read it on. It's like, and everything online is real. A lot of it is like tailored, especially anything like social media wise. Like Facebook proved that when you could look up your like political affiliation. And so it's like, yeah. So like no one's open to opposing viewpoints because everything that they're seeing online, right? Their algorithms that are tailored to them, all they're going to see is stuff that supports their own beliefs. Basically puts them in this little bubble, this little like force field of like, if someone else is trying to like explain a different process than what they want to hear, no, they go into a fit, rage.
Yeah. You know, it's the days where you can have a healthy argument and it can end up enlightening both sides, getting you thinking. You don't take offense to it. You don't take it personally. You just take the information and like, oh, I didn't. It's like, now I know why they believe that. They know why I believe this. You're thinking for yourself. You're arguing on your points. Now, yeah, you're just so quick to pull up your phone and like if I go on my phone, I look up, why is the Earth flat or why is the Earth round? Like I can find convincing information for both of those. So, I mean, that's an extreme example.
You say convincing. I don't know about that one,
but yeah, and people can find things to fit their agenda for sure online at any point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the conversation we had this morning about mermaids and Sasquatch. It's like you can find anything to support anything.
Yeah,
and it's what people are willing to believe that is the main crux, right? Like, it's just like for me, right? Like I said, it's more fun to believe in some of these things because otherwise it's like it's boring and it's a slow process, right? If there's things you're willing to believe in that haven't 100% been proven, right? Then you have something to look forward to or to like to, look into yourself, right? But it's like, with like the Bigfoot or like mermaids, it's like, but then there's the flat earth theory. And then it's like, but they almost take it to like just such an extreme that it's like now anybody who says otherwise,
well, and a lot of those people like
they want to persecute, like it's Galileo, like they're like put them under house arrest, like burn them at the stake. They're witches. It's like, I don't care. Like, do I think you're right in believing that the earth is flat? No. Is there like maybe a chance? Possibly. But there's a lot of like scientific, like there's been people to prove the earth is round. Like,
well, I mean, just for full disclosure, I do believe the earth's flat. So
I'm sure you do.
No, I mean,
but like
those people, though,
the Egyptians proved it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like,
but nowadays they'll avoid any truth that possible. So if you try to show them anything, they're like, no,
that's fake. It's like, how do we know that the Egyptians did? It's like, because the Egyptians were smart people and they recorded everything they did and they wrote it down. Like you can still see their, massive sculptures, the pyramids that they made millions of years ago, right? And you're going to say it's coincidence that everything lines up perfectly. It's like, no one does that. No, like sure, we could do that now, but it's like,
the thing I love the most is when you look up in space and you see other planets. What shape are they?
Yeah, weird. They're all circles.
We're only the one that's flat.
Yeah. Oh no, those are all flat too.
Yeah.
They just all happen to be. It's like
facing us.
The only way that the Earth is flat and we look up in the stars and we see and like look through telescopes and see other circles, right? It forces a heliocentric universe system. Like we're the center of the universe and everything is spinning around us as flat discs, like circles we draw on the wall, right? Like if you drew a bunch of smiley faces on the wall, well, they're all looking at us. No matter what point we are at, they're all smiling at us. And it's like science, like, are we spinning around the sun or is the sun spinning around us? That's the only way that flat earth theory works is if we are the center of the universe. Which, I mean, I guess gravity's not proven yet. It's still a theory, but
yeah, there's some interesting things that we just don't have the understanding for. Like, how do you prove? Like, how do you explain consciousness? Like, that is something that I always like boggles my brain. It hurts just even thinking about it. Like, how is consciousness a thing? And then,
well, right, like I always like the ones that are like simpler than that. Like, explain the creation of the number 3.
The creation of the number 3?
Yeah.
Or why that number specifically?
Yeah, explain the number 3. Like, explain how the number 3 came to be.
Well, language. Right?
So how?
Universal language. But how?
What universal language? There hasn't been one, right? And even religiously, there used to be one.
Because I mean, the numbers still look differently in other languages. But I'm talking about how it works. But yeah, the number 3. So like our number 3.
No, just the concept of the number 3. Explain that, how it came to be, right? Or like, why did we name it purple? Oh, that's a serious question. Like, it's like dumb things like that, or like, right? Like,
well, you just follow it back to its roots, and then a lot of it's just
we have a timeline that we can follow back to where it like came from.
Yeah.
But if you were that person, way back when, I want you to explain the color purple.
That you were just the lucky person that got to decide that.
Well, why? How
I don't know.
You like that?
We do things all the time that we can't explain. We just do them. It's just instinct or nature, human nature. It's the feeling we have at the moment.
Do you think it was instinctual that we knew how to come up with a number system?
Probably not math. No, I mean math. I mean, because just math in itself is mind-boggling. How we came up with a system to be able to measure things universally and to be able to, it just works. It's like it was a puzzle.
And we
piece.
did it twice. They have the metric system and the American system. So it's
Yeah.
like, granted, they're both based around the same general idea, but
Mhm.
right. But then we came up with conversions.
Mhm.
Now it's like some things work in metric, some things work in the US metric,
Mhm.
and then
But you take another, I mean, because that's what I'm saying. It works for us, but we make it work around it. If you were to take another civilization from another solar system planet and
Yeah.
they have their own system, but it works for them, but it doesn't want to work for us.
Right. This is my point.
It's like a fourth dimension.
Well, yeah. And it's like you have to try and explain new concepts to people who have already like tried understanding something already. It's just there's levels of consciousness that I don't think we're ready to access. If we can't possibly comprehend something, like if we can't come up with an, like, I don't know how to explain it. No, that's the point. It's like I can't explain it, so it won't be anything new until someone comes along and figures out the way to explain it. And then, like what we were saying, like the origin of the color purple, right? Like then that becomes a new origin point for this new concept, and then it will build on that. It's like I don't know where all these origins started, right? But you track it back, and when it got to them, it's like, what made them call it that? Like, why is it that? How were we able to measure color through, like, you know, the spectrum of frequencies, and like the different stars give off different colors based on like their heat or temperature or chemical makeup? It's like, but somehow they all unanimously are like across the entire, it's all the same. And they all follow the same pattern. We were able to figure out a way to measure it all. It just,
Yeah. Do you believe there's life outside of us? Like,
I think there has to be.
do you think there? Yeah.
I think it's arrogant to not to
I
think
think
that we're the
it's-
only things out here in the universe.
I think it's arrogant to, or it's almost, because like if you for example just like 100% no, there's nothing out there, like you have to have that curiosity, I think, because
Yeah.
we are so small compared to the vast amount
Yeah.
of space around us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a good possibility there's something around us, but I also believe that us on Earth it's a miracle that we even exist, because it's a perfect formation of a compilation of everything coming
Right.
together just
In the
perfectly
right time.
for us to be able to exist.
But so, like, with the idea
Mhm.
of if the universe is infinite,
Yeah.
we've already found other planets that match our chemical makeup. Like,
Mhm.
they found other Earths, basically the same atmospheric composition, same size, same
But with no life.
with no light.
Yeah.
So it's just somewhere else in our timeline, where, or like if they were made at the same time, right?
Mhm.
Something sparked it with us on our Earth, and then that spark hasn't happened on this other planet. Well, it's like, well, if we've only seen, like, let's say we've seen 50 of them,
Mhm.
right? Well, that's only in our visible spectrum, but we can see into galaxies and other galaxies
Mhm.
outside of our own. But there's how many millions of stars in our own galaxy?
Just the fact that we're looking into the past, which is kind of weird too.
Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
does that even exist? How far ahead? Like,
Mhm.
if we're looking into a past, what we see might be like, if we see something that's dead even with us, well, it's how many million years ago, right? Because it's all based in light years, which is time traveled by time.
Mhm.
So it's like, if we look back, we see something that's very similar to us. Well, if we then got there, by the time we got there, it's not like that.
Yeah.
They're however 50 million years further advanced. So
Yeah,
there's no way to track that unless you start getting into that, like,
Mhm.
speed of light travel, and then that's technically time travel, because the shorter you can make that light year,
Mhm.
because that's what they think time travel is, right? The faster you go,
Mhm.
slower time travels for you. So you're essentially moving through time. And until they figure out how to do that without killing us.
And I think that's what it comes down to. We picked a lane of technology to advance through, and it's not the lane that's going to be appropriate for doing that type of stuff, because they're starting to dabble in other lanes of technology through sound and light.
There's that theory that's how the Egyptians moved the panels or like the stones, because they had some way to access the frequency channels that everything lived in. So it's like,
but it's interesting with that because sound travels so much slower than like ever. So
but that wouldn't matter if you're right there in front of it.
Yeah, for that stuff, I'm talking about more for like space travel and stuff. It'd be some sort of energy we don't even have control over and understanding. So it's like, how do you harness that? It's not something that we can do with our current technology path, I don't think.
No. And then and that's going to be one of those things, right? Like none of us can understand it right now. The minute someone figures it out, writes it down in this simple terms, then everybody understands it. Whether or not those people are able to replicate and create it themselves, one thing, but they can understand the concept of it. Right. Even time travel now, it's like not everybody really gets it, but it's like you have to be moving real fast in an open space and not hit anything. And then basically you're so much faster than light, which means you can travel. I don't know if it's back in time or forward, but
I don't know, because
I feel like it's forward because I don't know. There's too many movies that it's like you can't base your
a lot of our current understanding is based off just fiction. It's just stuff that we've made to seem like a thing.
Well, that's why the Lightyear movie, that idea of how he jumped in time is actually fairly correct. Like that's what they think would happen. It's like you'd be jumping into the future through like the closer you can get to light speed is the faster, like basically you're outrunning time. So you're kind of like running ahead of it. So you're going too fast. And obviously I need to look more into it, read into it more. But I think that was one of the closer like interpretations of it, because every time he tried to do like jump back in the time or get his warp crystal to work properly to get them back up and running, jump 10 years forward every time he did it or something like that, because he was outrunning it and getting ahead of himself. It's just, he wasn't thinking about it.
But. And then I'm like thinking, if there is life, do they look like us or do they look different?
Unless if they're even carbon based.
What do aliens look like?
Oh, imagine like an alien life form that was based on like neon.
Because like maybe to get to that point where you can travel like that, you don't have a physical
form
structure like we do, because it's not compatible. It's like you end up becoming light or something like that. Light with it could be so far different timeline. They're started at a different time, or maybe there's another life form that's stuck before or at the same time, so they don't have the ability to leave either. So we just haven't.
We haven't evolved to a point where we can get.
But I don't know. I haven't done a lot of research on it. I have like two personal like theories or opinions on it, but it's more of the thinking of I'm here on this earth. I'm a peon. I'm just very small. There's something much bigger than me that we just don't have an understanding. And that's where the whole faith comes into play. But it's like, we're put on this earth and we have space to look up into and to understand, we are something so much bigger than us. And it's beautiful. You look at it, it just makes you, it keeps you humble and it keeps you curious. And it was like, then a lot of the looking up in the sky at night, comes to faith and just having like, that who's that creator, or the space is never ending and expanding because, whoever your God that you believe in is providing that for this
Right.
people on this planet to have the resources to be able to leave eventually. Because if you look at the grand scheme of time, the human period is so tiny and minuscule compared to everything in large. So
yeah, and it's like, and even if for like non-religious people, right? It's like to think we're the only things in existence. Like even if they don't believe in a God, right? You just think that this is how things are. We're just here because, but think that there's nothing else out there. It's like, well, well, it's silly in my opinion because there's so much out there we don't, well, one, haven't seen, and two, like even explored, right? Like, but then that gets into the whole like, do you believe we can, or if it's all a false reality and like they just
I think the biggest thing with atheists for me is like, okay, so you take an atheist in today's world, they're like, yeah, I don't believe in the creator. I believe in just what I think a lot of them are like evolution based,
like science, right? Like whatever.
But it's like,
science
so right now in 2024, you have all this science that we've discovered. Okay, you put yourself as an atheist back 400 years ago, your level of understanding is so much smaller. So it's like it's always expanding. So like you have to humble yourself to understand that there is things we do not understand that we're going to discover. So it's like there's got to be something out there.
Yeah, and even if they're like, it could be a point where like someone proves God's existence, and then what? Your idea of reality gets so shattered at that point. They go, well, God's real, and here's why. And here's the science behind it, backing it. And then that person goes, well, I don't believe in God. It's like, but this is science. Like, this is based on science. Like, we've proved it.
Yeah.
And then they go, now they're just stuck. It's like, well, what are you going to believe now? That there's a God based in science, or is it like he still doesn't exist? But it's like, it's like you can't believe in nothing because nothing.
Yeah. What's the value in your life?
Well, it's not even like, it's not even so much the value in your life. It's like, but like nothing isn't real. Like there's no such thing as nothing. Like it's like zero. Right?
Well, I consider that value. Yeah. I mean, if you.
Yeah, but that's like, it's so like subjective, right? Like, but like nothing as a concept can't possibly exist because it's like, what are you thinking about? Nothing. Well, that's not true. Like if you're thinking about nothing, that is something. Therefore, like it's not nothing. Right. So it's like you get into these weird paradoxes of like philosophy and like science. It's like, well, you think that nothing created this. It's like, you can't forget what comedian it was. It's like, he's like, you can't hear, see, smell, or taste it. Right. And then basically the science behind everything. It's like, it's proving that like nothing doesn't exist. And like the argument was that like atheists ripping on people for their faith in God, right? Their grounds for being atheists, that's the same thing of why they believe in God. Like he compares it to being the same thing. And it's super funny, but yeah, nothing doesn't exist because things exist. Very philosophical.
Yeah.
But so I think like I can understand not believing in like God, but saying that like, I don't know, it's the same thing, right? Like the Big Bang, right? This thing happened and everything came into creation. It's like the same thing is like God doing it in 7 days, right? There was nothing, and then all of a sudden there's everything. Same thing with the Big Bang. So it's like, yeah, it's all like an origin story to the universe that no one can prove. So it's like what someone chooses to believe. Yeah, it's their choice, but like to bag on people about it and rip them for it and to say that they're wrong because they think of something else. It's like, I think that's just, it's getting off the path or like off, like the point is to like, if the point is to like live happily, right? It's like, all right, well, if I think this thing and you think that thing, like we can still get along and talk about it and be friends. We don't have to like hate each other because we think of something different. It's like, but today's day and age, like that's almost like not possible because it's become so everything's so volatile. Like you can't believe, like I'm not allowed to believe something because you think it's wrong. It's like, well, that's stupid. It's like I think you're wrong for believing this, but I don't tell you you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can do your own thing. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but just don't tell me I have to do the same thing. That's usually like my whole point.
Yeah.
And that's across the board with everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? You do you, but do not tell me that I have to as well because you think so, or that I need to follow your rules. That's jobs obviously don't count, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if you or me, like if I believed in something that I personally like would want you to believe in or want you to follow, like that's in your own time.
Yeah.
It's you can't force something on someone. Everybody finds things in their own time and their own experiences. And
Yeah.
if you truly want someone to follow your same belief, then it's through love and communication and curiosity, answering questions,
Yeah.
and being able to almost exemplify like what you believe to the person enough to convince them or to make them think like, oh, maybe maybe the way they are living their life or their beliefs or something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's very much like-
once you start forcing it down someone's throat, they just they don't want to do anything else but turn the other direction as fast as they can.
Yeah, because it's forced, right? It's like
But,
if you're leading by example, right?
mhm.
You know, at some point someone's going to see it and be like, what is it that they're doing that I'm not doing that
Mhm.
makes
Once
it
seems
so
genuine.
look so easy for them, right? And then that's where that curiosity comes into
Mhm.
play, right? It's like, hey, like what are you doing? What help me, right?
Yeah.
But if it's like if no one's looking for help, right, and they got their own system and their way of doing things, and then like all of a sudden someone's like, hey, you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
Well, tell me why I'm doing it wrong first. Like, well, that's because it's not what I said, or it's not what
Yeah.
this person said, or it's not what this book said, right? You're wrong.
Mhm.
I don't think so. Everything I've been doing is fine up until this point, but you now all of a sudden arbitrarily just tell me
Mhm.
that I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, they're going to recede and they're like,
Mm.
we don't like you
Yeah.
because you're trying to tell people how to live their life.
Mhm.
Like,
This I think the easiest way for me to understand it and me to just like keep myself in check or in mind it. And I'm gonna talk about like faith specifically, like with my kids or just people that I know and that I love, is you can't grow something by drowning it. Like you're not going to grow something by
Mhm.
drowning it. So that's forcing an opinion. And you also can't grow something by neglecting it.
right.
So it's just the perfect balance of nurturing it and
Give it the
feeding it
opportunity.
every now and then, giving it an opportunity, giving it that light to grow. And it's a metaphor, but it's like it works perfectly.
Yeah.
That's how life exists.
Yeah.
So
It's what you just said. There's that clip from, you ever watch that show, Boy Meets World?
I know of it, but I never watched it. No.
Basically like the teacher that the main character had,
Mhm.
right? Like they have this conversation. The main character is like having like his own personal dilemma. He's like, well, I don't know what I should be doing. The teacher's like he brings up a pot, like a flower that he has in the garden. He's like, I had to bring it out here because I had it in the house and it outgrew its pot. He's
Mhm.
like, I had to move it out into this bigger pot outside. And he's like, oh, because, it needed more, like it needed to grow. He's like, well, no, it wasn't the fact that it needed to grow, but it's like, well, I was probably saying it wrong, but it was like, it wasn't going to outgrow its pot, right?
Yeah.
It's going to grow into its pot.
Mhm.
But he's like, I wanted it to grow. So I had to give it more space, more opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's the
a
same
good
thing
point.
applies to everything else, right? It's like
Mm.
the more you smother something, right, faster the fire burns out, right? So if someone's super excited about soccer, right, and that's what happens to a lot of athletes and people that are super motivated about things, right? It's like they get burnt out. Like that guy I was telling you about, the captain of my swim team, super colorful Mormon one. He didn't swim in college, but He was fast. Like his 500 freestyle time, his 100 freestyle splits were as fast as my fastest 100 time ever was. And he was doing that 5 times. And he's like crazy fast. He could have gone onto a swim team in college. Didn't want to. He was just tired of it. Guess that's what his life was. In the pool all the time. His hair was that stringy, like chlorine bleached hair.
Mm-hmm.
He was just done. He was just tired of it. And he quit swimming. People quit football all the time, right? They just tired of it. Going to happen to, right? Like you got to let people find their own passion and be motivated by these things and let their curiosity drive them. But you can't like exactly what you said.
Plant the seed.
Yeah. Give it water, give it sunlight, let it grow on its own, right? Let it do its own thing. Because if you give it too much water, right? Too much love, things will fail.
Yeah.
Right. That's like the enabling parent, right? Like you're just like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
You give them all the fanciest shit, like the $400 baseball bats, like basically send them all you give them all the fancy gear, but like, yeah, they could maybe use it, but they just get full of themselves and then crumble the minute something goes south and they can't deal with the adversity. Right. But then if you don't give it enough water, right. Yeah. The adversity is going to take over. It's going to beat them out.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm a very curious person in nature. And sometimes I like to dabble in things. Yeah. And when I find an interest in something, I almost go I full send it too much.
Yep.
And I buy a bunch of stuff. And then I almost feel guilty for doing it. And I'm like, wait, you get that Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you know more than you actually do.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh crap, I just bought all this stuff. Now I am almost like have to do this. And then you lose that passion.
Yep. Now you're forced into it.
That's gone into like hobbies and stuff. But
yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. Right. Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to fight that. Cause that's what, I don't like, what did I do? I bought a hunting rifle. I've yet to go hunting because I don't have the opportunity to like go. Obviously I'm from SoCal. There's not a whole lot of hunting down there. Yeah. Unless you're hunting for people, but
we'll get you hunting. I need to go with some of the guys on the crew, but I haven't been yet either. So
yeah, I bought a gun for it, but I don't have a sling for the gun. Like I don't have any hunting gear. So it's like, just have the gun. Just what I feel like the biggest step, but because you can go hunting in jeans and like boots, right? It's like a day hunt. Just go try and find something. If not, whatever, you just go home. But yeah, I want to get into that kind of stuff, but it's like full send. You try to full send them. It's like the cost is too much, right?
Yeah.
That's that lack of nutrients, right? You don't have the water to get into or to grow into that pot, right? Or if it's like in your case, right? Like you bought a bunch of stuff to get into it and then you drowned yourself. Yeah. Now you're overwhelmed and now you're like, shit, I don't actually know what I'm doing with this stuff. So it's like, yeah, I can go and you can do it to yourself.
Yeah, you do it to yourself.
It's
that's why it's important to have a mentor. It's important to have people around you that align well with you because you can have ideas, you can have interests and things that you want, or you have a vision of how you want to live your life.
Yeah.
But you end up in the wrong group of people. Yeah. You just get
hanging in with the wrong crowd.
So yeah. Here's just like with my kids, when they get to when they're a little older, I'll have a very important conversation with them on, as a kid, friendships come and go. Like where they're at elementary age, it's kind of innocent at this point, but it's going to get to a point where it's not so innocent, and they really have to choose wisely who they're hanging out with.
You also got to let them make mistakes too.
Exactly, you can't. That's going to be the biggest transition is
pull them back a little bit so you don't
smother them. Exactly what we're talking about. It's just they have to figure it out for themselves. But just being able to instill values of like they understand what's right and wrong, and to be able to make that decision with not living in fear as well. Like the repercussions. So just living honestly, not lying to us about where they are, where they've been, and just being transparent. Like if they want to be friends with someone and they want to be in a specific group, that we're going to be understanding enough and not forcing like, no, you have to hang out with this group. But we're going to want to make sure it's good for them. But it's like we can't dictate 100% where they are going to end up.
Yeah.
Because they're not us. But
that's terrifying too, though. It's like,
just,
it's awful.
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
Yeah.
It's too uncertain.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I grew up very sheltered and forced.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, no, you cannot hang out with this person. You can't do this sport. You have to do this. I wasn't an athlete. I was in band. I was like, yeah, you're going to play in sports. You can't go out on the weekends. It's too dangerous. With like hunting, fishing. I got into paintballing. And I remember my family just because I freaking out. It's almost like feel like I had to lie about them. Like, no, I'm just going over. We're gonna go for a short.
Why are you wearing so many sweatshirts? It's cold outside.
98 so degrees. Like, in a way, I felt drowned. And then as soon as I was released into the wild, I
went nuts.
A little bit. Yeah, and then I joined the military because it was I needed to do an extreme thing, so I joined the military. That was like it was almost in defiance because no one in my family wanted me to join the military. But I knew I was going to be thrown into danger and excitement.
Yeah,
I was going to be around a group of people that had the same interests that I had, and I was going to finally be away from my family and being able to be around people who weren't like that.
Right.
So, yeah. And it was great for a while.
Like how you say,
it's like the newness of,
Yeah. I mean, everything's got the honeymoon phase, but
yeah. And then, it
gets into that, like, do you actually enjoy it or not?
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
I found it's a chapter in my life that, I want to close and move on. But now I got my son asking me about the military questions about that. And, I'll be honest with him. But I also I understand he's 9 years old, so I can't.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? It's a bunch of people that have been in the military that are like, don't join.
Yeah.
And both my parents said, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got a family to look out for. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
I think there's a lot of value in it. I think.
Well, that's why I think we should do what like Israel does, right? The
conscripted for 2 years.
Yes, just do 2 years. Like, you don't have to be infantry, right? They're going to find people.
Yeah.
Right? That means you have a constant influx of new people coming in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet there's a ton of people that could benefit greatly from that and find a career path within the military or even outside after the fact, that they could just be like, hey, the military helped me, right? Get them like reinstill like some pretty solid like foundation for like discipline and like, working out and being healthy, right? And all you got to do is 2 years, right? You don't have to be infantry, but you just got to suffer through boot camp and, regular PT tests. But then at 2 years, you can either stay in, get out. You choose to get out. That's it. You're done. But the way our country is right now, there's no way that ever passes. Every high school graduate going straight to a military boot camp to do 2 years.
Yeah, no way.
Good luck.
Yeah, we just don't have that culture. Yeah, we don't.
No. Well, especially like those 2 years, right? Are you putting them in high school or are you going to do it after college? Do college athletes get exemption? That's a whole industry that's going to have a problem with that. Then you're going to have all the like rich, middle, like upper middle class people that are like, no, my kids got to do these things. They got to go to college at this school. They got to do blah, 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 blah. And it's going to be another one of those like class things where poor people can't fight it. So they're stuck going. And if they don't go, then they're arrested. It would help, but people won't ever be on board. Too late.
Yeah, I'm curious if those countries with conscripted service, if they have the issues that we would have, like the draft dodging and stuff. or if I think it's built into their culture at this point.
Yeah.
But,
If they're already in, how do you
yeah.
like draft dodging?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understands
Mhm.
who's going to war and who's not.
Yeah.
For some reason,
Mm.
we're the ones that can't understand that. Because when it comes down to, right, that's like the minute the draft shows up and everything starts reverting back to like wartime, everyone's going to jump back to those like,
Mm.
you know, traditional roles and views. And it's going to be like, oh, hey, like, yeah, this is real now. It's happening again.
Yeah, it's a reality check for sure.
It's like, when like the,
Mm-hmm.
then you get into all the other craziness around the draft, who would be allowed in, who's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think the military service definitely translate over well to like first responders and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like you see a lot of those mindsets within the first responder realm. And I know
It's because a bunch of them are.
Yeah, I know you didn't do military service, but you tend either you have had family in it or you had a background. I think you did like ROTC or something like that.
No, so I mean, the magnet program that I was
Yeah.
in at high school was like a police academy magnet, so I
Yeah.
still had to iron my uniform and like
Gotcha.
shine my shoes.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
wasn't like military; it wasn't ROTC.
Yeah.
But like when I was in that, both my parents were like,
Mhm.
like my mom showed me how to iron my shirt, my dad showed me how to shine my shoes, and it was like Sunday night. Like Mondays were like uniform days.
Mhm.
It was Sunday night, just sitting there watching TV, just ironing my shirt. My mom would jump my shit if I double crease my pants.
Mhm.
So I'm like super picky about that. So like every time, if I take my pants to the dry cleaners, because like it's been a while since like I had my suit cleaned or whatever,
Yeah.
and I look at my pants and they're double creased, I'm pissed. Like, so I'll go back through and take my own iron through it and try and fix it and try not to burn my pants. And then my shoes, it'd be like 6 p.m. till 10 or 11. Just watching TV, little baby circles for 2 hours a shoe.
Yeah. Discipline with your kids and on the little things or things like that goes a long ways.
I
in
try.
life, just in different situations.
Little kids are hard. Like you
Yeah.
can try to get those
Mhm.
little habits. Like
Yeah.
I've tried to get Coral, like when she's done eating something,
Mhm.
okay, go throw your trash away.
Mhm.
And when she's around me, she does it.
Mhm.
But when
Yeah.
like Wendy's around, it's
Yeah.
a little bit less so.
Yeah.
Just because Wendy's more lax on those kind of things. He's not real quick to be like, okay,
Mhm.
go do it. Whereas
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm around. Like this is how we're gonna do things. Like we'll play and goof around, but like if she has trash from a snack or candy or whatever,
Mhm.
okay, go throw it away. Okay, we're not gonna just leave trash around and like make a mess for the sake of mess.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing I think learning as a parent is just being able to have the patience to understand or explain to them, the reasoning behind decisions and why it's important, and then understand that, yeah, they are their age and
Yeah.
I am my age. So we're going to have a level of understanding that's different.
You're gonna have to
So,
repeat yourself a lot.
Yeah. So just having that love and patience with them. But
That's something I'm
Yeah.
having to learn that I can do that my dad never did.
Mhm.
It's like being able to repeat himself without freaking out.
Yeah.
Because my dad, because of the military, right? You do it right the first time, and that's it, right? Because to him, right, if you didn't do something right the first time, someone died.
Mhm.
Like when he got back from the war, that's what he kept saying to us.
Mhm.
Hey, take out the trash. He had to ask me a second time. He'd freak out, lecture. And that was for everything. Mowing the lawn, right? And imagine being like 12 years old and
Mhm.
your dad's lecturing you about someone dying because you didn't do something right. Especially when it's take out the trash or like sweep the floor. And you're like, someone fucking dies. And you're like, I can't grasp that concept
Mhm.
for mowing the lawn or throwing this thing. It's like,
Yeah.
but that was how, like, he came back intense. It was just that way.
Yeah. It's tough. It's happened to so many. It's just,
Yeah. And like, I was able to deal with it.
Mhm.
That's probably why I'm very much so like set the expectation of what needs to be done and I will do it
Mhm.
and I'll get it done. But yeah, I don't like. I'm finding I don't like repeating myself. It's
Mhm.
just hard because little kids.
Yeah.
It's like, especially if I'm like looking right at somebody, I'm like, hey, do this. It's like,
Nowadays, they're just on their phone.
yeah. Well, it's usually technology that they're distracted by. I'm like, then
Yeah.
I'm like,
Mhm.
hey,
Yeah, get their full attention. So,
but even then, it's just like they're looking through you to the thing behind you, and you can
Mhm.
see it in their eyes, like when they're glazed over and they're just like, just not really paying attention. You're like, hey, wake up, wake up. What? But
yeah.
yeah, it was difficult, but it's
Yeah, it was a residual experience for you. You know, seeing some of what your dad went through
yeah,
come out through him to you. But yeah, it's like you turned out all right.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I feel like I got lucky
Yeah.
because you know my mom's side of the family all grew up in the projects. Right, one mom, 6 kids, single income household, whatever my grandma was doing for work. All of them went to college. I don't know how those odds played out. Right,
Mhm.
all 6 kids from a single Mexican mom, immigrant living in the projects, and all 6 of those kids got to college on their own accords. Crazy. And then my dad, who had those opportunities without that, threw them away because he was just trying to get out of Dodge and get away from my grandpa
Mhm.
and join the Navy. It's like, yeah, I mean, I should have been a gangbanger, 6'5" Mexican gangbanger by all accounts, because just who, like, like, just who, like, is associated with my family could have very easily gone a different way at like a couple different points in time, but
Yeah. Well, glad you didn't.
it
You
worked
stick
out.
around up here for a while.
I'm not probably
And
leaving Idaho ever.
yeah, best of luck to you in your endeavors with your fire service career. And yeah,
We'll see where that goes.
yeah, yeah. But it was awesome having you on. So
Thank you.
yeah, we we'll still chat even though if you leave us. But
Yeah,
I know
we'll be playing pickleball at
Yeah,
some point.
it's quite the addiction. But yeah. All right, brother.
All right. Well, thank you.
Peace.